Chapter 645. The viewers in the livestream room were all veterans who were used to big storms. They laughed at the poor Fengjun while silently eating their dog food. Not to mention anything else, their streamer really spoiled the little princess strategist too much. Today's wait, I'm crying for Fengjun. He's also a sickly person. You can't bully him just because he's unrestrained. Yu Pang, holding the fresh dog food and silently nibbling on it in the corner, the streamer really spoils the little princess strategist. Road to losing weight. It's probably because Fengjun is too unrestrained and Simi is too obedient. Obedient children are always more likable. Elsewhere, while Jiang Pengji was toying with the Red Lotus group and wrapping up the 3,000 ambushing troops, the situation in Red Lotus district quietly changed. Let's go back in time. At that time, Shui and the second-in-command of the Red Lotus group hit it off. The two of them colluded and caused a wave of big trouble. As a brother who had gone through life and death with the leader, the second-in-command was all too familiar with the habits of the leader. The leader was not very wary of him. When the second-in-command rushed into the deity palace with his trusted subordinates and captured the Red Lotus group leader, the leader's strong body was pressing down on the bodies of two beautiful women. He was sweating profusely, and even when he was tied up, he was still in a daze. Looking at the second-in-command's ferocious face, then looking down at his naked black body, his cheeks alternated between red and green. Do you want to be punished by deity? The second-in-command snorted contemptuously and raised his hand to give the man a kick. You can fool those idiots with your words, but do you think you can fool me? I even know when you wet your bed, when you first ejaculated, when you peeped on widows bathing, when you flirted with young women, when you did all those things. I know all of them. How can you say you're deity when you're like this? I'm so scared. Why don't you return to your position and send celestial soldiers and generals to kill me? Can you do that? Boasting about being the incarnation of deity, the second-in-command suppressed his anger and poured out his grievances at the leader of the Red Lotus group. He originally did not want to betray the leader of the Red Lotus group. After all, the fact that the leader of the Red Lotus group was an incarnation of deity was deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. Without the incarnation of deity, the Red Lotus group would only exist in name. Apart from the brainless believers, the other fence-sitters would soon scatter. However, he really couldn't stand his current life. Why was it that even though he had contributed so much to the sacred cult, all the benefits were enjoyed by the cult master in the end, while he couldn't even get a sip of the meat soup? It was fine if he could not get the meat soup, but the leader of the Red Lotus group valued a scholar who only knew how to talk. The psychological imbalance, the disparity in treatment, and the fact that his position in the sect had not reached his expectations, coupled with the restless ambition in his heart. These factors led him to take the risk out of desperation and imprison the leader of the Red Lotus group. He planned to turn the other party into a puppet that he could use as he pleased. The leader of the Red Lotus group was spat on by the other party. He was so angry that his entire body trembled. He cursed loudly. The spit was as stinky as a latrine pit. Don't be so arrogant. When a military advisor returns with his troops, it will be the day of your death. The second-in-command's heart skipped a beat. He felt a little weak, but he still put on a fierce front. He ordered his men to carefully imprison the leader of the Red Lotus group. The second-in-command kept pacing back and forth. Although he had long had the intention to rebel, it was just a strong thought, and he had never put it into action. With Shui's help, it was like adding wings to a tiger. However, once disloyalty was not tolerated, and Shui might betray others, but he might betray the second-in-command as well. The second-in-command seemed to put Shui in an important position, but he was still wary and on guard. However, the current situation was a little tricky. If he did not rely on Shui's ability, when the military advisor returned with the members of the Red Lotus group, it would be the day of his death. In order to survive, he had no choice but to continue working with Shui. The advice Shui gave him was also very pertinent. He spoke energetically and convinced the second-in-command wholeheartedly. The second-in-command had already taken down Red Lotus District, but the other 3 districts were still in the hands of the Red Lotus group. The news of Jinmen District's fall had not yet spread. Whether in terms of manpower or territory, the second-in-command was no match for the Red Lotus group. If he wanted to turn the tables, the second-in-command could only take advantage of the fact that the Red Lotus group and Liu Shi were fighting fiercely to fish in troubled waters. He could quietly launch a sneak attack on the Red Lotus group's territory and expand his power. In the end, and Shui said in a bewitching tone, "At this moment, the news that you've captured the leader hasn't spread. You can take your men and horses and rush to Qiyu district. You can use your status as the left and right protectors to deceive the county into opening the gates and welcoming you in without expending a single soldier's strength. If you don't seize this opportunity, when the news spreads throughout Qingda County, it will be difficult for you to take advantage of it. Opportunities are fleeting." The second-in-command was tempted. It wasn't that he couldn't control himself. It was clearly because Shui's tongue was as smooth as a lotus flower. He was too good at bewitching people. What should we do about Red Lotus District? The second-in-command was still suspicious of Shui, afraid that the other party had ulterior motives. Shui said, "That's easy. You could just leave a few trusted subordinates to guard the city. Red Lotus District is easy to defend and difficult to attack. It's difficult for outsiders to conquer it." He spoke naturally and gracefully, but the second-in-command felt embarrassed. After fooling the second-in-command, Shui did another secretive thing. He sent a beggar to inform Jiang Pingji and sent someone to Fenghu District to inform a scholar of the Red Lotus Group. The contents of the report to Jiang Pingji had already been mentioned before. The contents of the report were more meaningful. On one hand, he tearfully reprimanded the second-in-command for his wild ambition and kidnapping him to Red Lotus District. On the other hand, he said that the second-in-command planned to kidnap the leader to Qiyu District. He hoped that the scholar would immediately come to the leader's rescue for the sake of the Red Lotus Group. The Oscars didn't owe Shui a Best Actor. It was obvious that they owed Shui an extra platoon of awards. Before the first wave had subsided, another wave arose. When the scholar of the Red Lotus Group received the message from Shui, he almost fainted. It was precisely because of this that the scholar temporarily forgot to pursue the matter of Shui's plan, causing them to lose Jinmen District. For the Red Lotus Group, the leader was their backbone. If the leader, who was the incarnation of God, was gone, the Red Lotus Group, which had been strong for a while, would definitely fall apart and be counterattacked by the Tsingy army. What should they do? In the end, the scholar's eyes reddened and his voice hoarse. "Even if the leader wants to rescue us, we can't hand over Jinmen District to that traitor Liu for nothing. Let's split up." The discipline within the Red Lotus Group was lax. It would take at least 2 or 3 days to gather the troops and set off. Now that the leader had been captured by the traitor, they were even more disorganized. They were like headless flies flying around without any order, and their speed was even slower. As an opponent of the Red Lotus Group, Jiang Pengji maximized the word efficiency. By the time the Red Lotus Group had sent half of its troops to attack Jinmen District, Jiang Pengji had already secretly brought people to Red Lotus District. The recruits who had been temporarily transferred over were already halfway there, just in time to outflank the forces of the Red Lotus Group attacking Jinmen District from the rear. In Jinmen District, Qiguan Rang was in charge, and his defense was impenetrable. The Red Lotus Group's repeated attacks were fruitless. Chapter 646. There was a saying that went, "I like it when you hate me to the bone, when you're gnashing your teeth but can't do anything to me." Well, it didn't seem out of place when used on Qiguan Rang and the Red Lotus Group. Qiguan Rang kept a low profile, but that didn't mean he was low-key on the battlefield. On the contrary, he was quite flamboyant. When defending the city, the enemy couldn't get in. When attacking the city, it was impossible to guard against. Even though the military strength in the city was insufficient and there were many brainless believers who caused trouble, Qiguan Rang still managed to suppress the situation under such harsh conditions. With sufficient defense equipment and his command, the Red Lotus Group didn't get within 100 meters of the city gate for 3 days in a row. Every time they cursed and attacked the city, the Red Lotus Group could only leave behind hundreds or thousands of corpses. They looked at Jinmen district, which was crawling on the ground, and sighed. In less than 7 or 8 days, the situation in Cheongda County had changed several times. First, Jinmen district fell into Jeongpungji's hands. Then, Holian district was conquered by the second-in-command of the Red Lotus Group. After that, the rebel army of the Red Lotus Group intended to encroach on Cheoyu district. They used their identities as the left and right protectors of the Red Lotus Group to deceive the guards into opening the city gate, killing them unexpectedly. They originally thought that the Red Lotus Group and Liu Shi would each occupy one district in Cheongda County, and the rebel army would occupy two. Who would have thought that in just a day, the situation would undergo an earth-shattering change? Liu Shi conquered another city, and Holian district was in his hands. Compared to Jinmen district, Holian district was almost a piece of cake. The main reason was that Enchui had arranged for an informant to receive them. Although Enchui's sworn brother wasn't very cultured, he was smart and obedient. He obediently carried out Enchui's plan. On one hand, he got the leader of the city guards drunk in the name of a banquet, and on the other, he took the opportunity to bribe the guards at the city gate. Taking advantage of the darkness of the night, he quietly opened the city gates and lured Jeongpungji into the city. Those who were completely drunk were either tied up in their sleep or had their heads chopped off and died on the spot. When the people in the city woke up, they realized that the flag on the city gate had been changed. Jeongpungji had taken over Holian district and deliberately blocked the news. The Red Lotus Group, which was staging a civil war inside and outside the city walls of Cheoyu district, had no idea. The plan is going well. Have the scouts returned yet? She had taken over half of Cheongda County's territory, and she was only 2 counties away from unifying Wanzhou. He's already back. This is the news gathered by the scouts. Fenghu County is now strong on the outside, but weak on the inside. It seems to be heavily guarded, but in fact it's very weak. Yang Si took out a roll of parchment from his sleeve and handed it to Jeongpungji. Does my lord want to take down Fenghu County in one go? Or do you want to delay it for a day or two? The soldiers have been marching day and night and are extremely tired. For the sake of combat strength, I suggest that we rest for a day. Jeongpungji's battle rhythm was rather fast, but it didn't mean that she didn't know her limits. Her physical strength could keep up, and she was still alive and kicking after a few days, but those soldiers were different. For the past few days, they had spent practically all of their time in the midst of a rapid march. Even their sleep and rest had to be taken advantage of. They were truly exhausted. Let's rest for a day, Jeongpungji said with a smile. Speaking of which, the new recruits from Fengyi County should be arriving soon. Although they've only trained for a month or two, they can still be put to good use. By the way, who's the leader? Yang Si said, Zixiao. Hearing this name, Jeongpungji frowned and said, his health isn't good. Why is he running around in the middle of winter? Yang Si didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Although Zixiao's body is cold, he's good at the art of Qi Huang and has a lot of experience in recuperating. After recuperating for a few years, his current condition is far better than before. Don't be fooled by his frail appearance. He's not that weak inside. He's not weak in riding and archery at all. He's good at riding a horse and drawing a bow. My lord always says that he's physically weak. Actually, men don't like to hear this. Yang Si wasn't a serious person. The last sentence didn't sound like much, but an experienced person could understand the meaning behind it. However, Jeongpungji said, I know. Yang Si was surprised. Since the Lord knew that Wei Si's health wasn't that bad, why did she remind him several times? For a strategist, if the Lord used his health as an excuse and repeatedly refused him to make contributions, it would be really hurtful. Jeongpungji said again, it's to punish the monkey to warn the chicken. Yang Si was completely dumbfounded. Punish the monkey to warn the chicken? What did she mean? If the live stream was still on at this time, the experienced viewers would probably be delighted to hear it and laugh. How could the streamer's words not be clear? She was obviously spoiling the little princess on purpose and generously showing it to others. This was a mouthful of sweet dog food, and they devoured it. In his previous life, Wei Si'ai and Qi Guanrang had been officials of the same court for more than 10 years. He also had a certain understanding of the latter. Knowing that the person guarding the city was Qiguan Rang, Wei Ci already had a plan in mind to cooperate with the encirclement and suppression. He brought more than 5,000 new recruits, and Qiguan Rang had 5,000 to 6,000 veterans in the city. There were more than 10,000 people in total. The Red Lotus Group, which was shouting outside the city, had more than 36,000 people. Under Qiguan Rang's attrition, there were only slightly more than 30,000 left. If they attacked from the front and rear and caught them off guard, they might be able to defeat 30,000 enemies with just over 10,000 troops. Wei Ci lowered his eyes and thought about it carefully. This plan was feasible. The Red Lotus Group was just a cult among the people. They lacked cohesion, and with Jiang Pengji's several blows, their morale had fallen to rock bottom. They did not have the determination to fight to the death. On the contrary, if they saw that the situation was not good, they would break into a run. In addition, Qiguan Rang was firmly guarding Jinmen District. A few days of forceful attacks had not been effective. Instead, they had suffered heavy losses. The morale of the army was already lax, and their combat power was not enough to be feared. If they gave the other party a head-on blow at this time, they would definitely be able to completely destroy the morale of the Red Lotus Group. As long as their military formation was completely disrupted and they flew around randomly like headless flies, they would definitely win this battle. Although Qiguan Rang's battle results were fruitful, only he knew how difficult it was inside. He did not dare to close his eyes and sleep for a few days, for fear that the Red Lotus Group outside would attack the city crazily while he slept soundly. The 30,000 troops were 6 times the number of soldiers in the city. He calculated the time and felt that he would be liberated in another day or two. Suka was a steady person. If he sent new recruits to battle, the leader would definitely be one of the few strategists in Fengyi County. Although Jiang Pengji's territory was not large, there were many top-notch talents, and some were partial. No matter who came, it would be a boost to Qiguan Rang's morale. Sure enough, at noon the next day, the reinforcements finally arrived. The Red Lotus Group was still shouting and provoking below the city walls. They cursed until their throats were swollen. In the end, they could not wait any longer and chose to attack. Qiguan Rang stood on the city wall and looked into the distance. He vaguely saw that there was an unusual movement behind the Red Lotus Group's army. His eyes were filled with warmth. In order to show their strength and reduce the threat of the ballistae on the city wall, the Red Lotus Group had deliberately set up a large battle formation. However, this had also caused a certain delay in the transmission of their information. It was not until the sand and dust were flying in the air behind them, the shouts of killing shook the heavens, and the casualties were heavy that the Red Lotus Group at the front realized that something was wrong. At this moment, Qiguan Rang sneered. Chapter 6:47. The flames of war spread, and dust flew everywhere. The war drums rumbled like thunder, and murderous shouts resounded through the heavens. The Red Lotus Group had suffered several setbacks. After splitting up their troops, they had suffered repeated losses outside Jinmen County. Their morale was low, and their will to fight was sparse. A group of enemies appeared out of nowhere and launched a sneak attack on the rear of the Red Lotus Group. Qiguan Rang, who was in Jinmen County, immediately gave the order to open the city gates and send out troops to meet the Red Lotus Group. This would restrain the main force at the front, making it impossible for them to take care of both the front and the rear. Under Qiguan Rang's command, the soldiers formed a military formation to break up the Red Lotus Group's formation and surround and kill them. If the Red Lotus Group counterattacked, they would scatter and not gather. Under Qiguan Rang's command, the Red Lotus Group felt that their enemy was like a piece of sticky candy that could not be removed. Most of the main forces of the Red Lotus Group were gathered at the front. Qiguan Rang stuck to them like a piece of candy, making it difficult for them to turn around and return to support the rear. Compared to Qiguan Rang's roundabout gentleness, Wei Ci appeared firm and decisive. Because of Jiang Pengji's strict control, the first thing the recruits received after entering the camp was not physical training, but how to carry out orders. Therefore, even though the people Wei Ci brought were all new recruits, they carried out his orders relatively well. Even if their physical fitness and combat qualities could not be compared to the veterans, the new recruits were much stronger than the Red Lotus group members who panicked and were at a loss when they were ambushed. Wei Xiai knew very well that Qiguan Rang was holding back the main force of the Red Lotus group, buying him precious time. The faster he killed, the more losses the Red Lotus group would suffer, and the less pressure Qiguan Rang would face. Therefore, in order to further expand the battle results, Wei Xiai chose a rather tough offensive formation. The vanguard was like an awl, sharp and swift. It broke through and severed the already chaotic rear of the Red Lotus group. The arrangement of the soldiers on the two flanks leaned towards defense. They were strong and powerful, taking into account speed and protecting the center of the army. At the same time, they could maximize the results of the battle and reap the lives of the Red Lotus group. The archers and pikemen were in the middle, supporting the front and two flanks, shooting the enemies and clearing the obstacles. The army led by Wei Xiai was like a pair of long scissors, easily tearing apart the rear of the Red Lotus group, making it impossible for the two wings to support and cooperate. Swords and sabers flashed, and arrows rained down like a tide. One by one, the corpses fell to the ground. As far as the eyes could see, there were severed limbs and broken bones. The military strength in Jinmen County, including the recruits that Wei Xiai had brought with him, totaled more than 10,000. The Red Lotus group still outnumbered them by 3 times. However, how could a place like the battlefield be won by having more people? With Wei Xi's attack and Qiguan Rang's containment, the Red Lotus group suffered heavy casualties. The morale of the army was slack, and they were in disarray. They tried to make a last-ditch effort to break out of the encirclement. However, Wei Xiai and Qiguan Rang's cooperation was rather tacit. The latter turned from restraining the enemy to encircling them, while the former turned from attacking to driving them away. The two of them were like experienced fishermen, and the soldiers they commanded were the sturdy fishing nets they had woven. The two of them did not communicate, but their hearts were in sync. They drove the panicking Red Lotus group, the big and small fishes, to one place and finally drew in the net. Captive. It was not until the setting sun shone on half of the horizon that Qiguan Rang reluctantly ordered his men to retreat. I thought that the person who came would be Zhi. Although Feng Zhen was a prodigal son and did not have a good relationship with Feng Jin, Su Ku, and the others, Qiguan Rang quite admired this guy. According to his temperament and style, he was quite suitable to lead the recruits to support Jinmen County. He had never expected that the last person to arrive would be Wei Xiai. Thinking about Wei Xi's usual style, it was very different from his style on the battlefield just now. Qiguan Rang could not help but re-examine this gentle and weak colleague. You've hidden yourself well, big brother. Wei Xiai was still afraid of the cold, so he wore a few more layers than others. He also wrapped himself in a windproof cloak made of rabbit fur. From afar, he looked like a snowball, just like how Yang Si felt cold when he looked at Qiguan Rang. Qiguan Rang also felt a little hot when he looked at Wei Xiai. After hearing Qiguan Rang's words, Wei Xiai smiled and coughed twice. Zhi is busy and far away in Shangyang County, presiding over the overall situation with Huayu. Going back and forth is a waste of time, and I'm afraid that it will delay the Lord's great plan. Helpless, I, an idle person with nothing to do, will help the Lord solve her worries. This was not the case. In the beginning, Feng Zhen had been eager to come. How could exhausting government affairs be as refreshing as fighting a war? However, Wei Xiai had a white face and a black heart. He was good at tricking his friends. From Zhang Ping, Yang Si, to Feng Zhen, when had he ever been merciful? Where's the Lord now? Wei Xiai had also rushed here overnight. He had no spare time to inquire about information. Qiguan Rang briefly explained the current situation on the battlefield. Jinmen County had been defended, and Honglian County could probably be deceived. Coincidentally, Wei Xiai had arrived, so he could lead the troops there to defend. The Red Lotus Group was having a civil war in Qiyu County. Jiang Pengji and Qiguan Rang had deliberately blocked the news, so they would not know about the changes here for the time being. Jiang Pengji could use this time gap to turn around and attack Fenghu County. When the 3 counties were stabilized, she would return to deal with the remaining troops of the Red Lotus group. Wei Xi kept a gentle expression and listened carefully. In his previous life, he had moved from Langia County to Zhongzhao's Bianzhou with the Wei family. As an invisible person, he was not valued, so he simply built a hut and lived in seclusion. He was still concerned about the affairs of the world, but most of the news came from Zhongzhao. As for the news of Dongqing, he only had a general idea. Perhaps the evildoer mentioned by monk Liaochen was causing trouble, stealing the fate of Dongqing and the vitality of the people, causing many things to happen in advance. In his previous life, the Red Lotus group had surfaced much later than it was now. The Red Lotus group had been preaching in the north for several years. It had accumulated countless loyal followers, and its followers were widely distributed. In the end, the leader of the Red Lotus group took advantage of the situation and revolted. He received the support of the people in the north, and the imperial court could not shake him. He suffered several losses, and the Tsing Yi army, who revolted at the same time, could only avoid him. The current Red Lotus group was still immature, and its teachings were not deeply rooted in the people's hearts. Otherwise, it would not have been easy to take Qingde County. Did the Lord go to Qiyu County? Wei Xi asked. Qiguan Rang replied. According to the time, that should be the case. Zixiao, fortunately you came. Otherwise, I would be really busy. Although the Red Lotus group is a motley crew, their ability to bewitch the people is not weak. In the past few days of defending the city, people have repeatedly tried to attack or bribe the guards of the city gate. On the surface, we have caught more than 22 of them, and there are even more who have not taken action in the dark. Wei Xi rubbed his eyebrows. It's best not to keep these stubborn followers around, lest they spoil our plans. A rat's droppings can spoil a whole pot of porridge. Who knows when these foolish people, whose brains have been brainwashed, will cause a disaster. The Red Lotus group should indeed be eliminated. Thinking of his previous life, Wei Xi's expression became inexplicably gloomy. There was a hidden murderous intent in his eyes, and even his gentle face turned cold. Understanding the meaning of Wei Xi's words, Qiguan Rang frowned slightly. Chapter 648. In Wei Xi's previous life, when Her Majesty established the Jiang dynasty, there was constant turmoil in the early days of the country's founding. There were natural disasters everywhere, and the remnants of the Red Lotus group took the opportunity to stir up trouble and revive. Although they did not cause much damage, they brought a certain gray haze to the new dynasty and made people panic. There were even some bold rebels who spread rumors that the Empress was a temptress, and they even tried to assassinate her several times. Even the death of His Majesty had something to do with the Red Lotus group, if one got to the bottom of it. Every time he thought of this, Wei Xi felt that he could not control his emotions. But Qiguan Rang was slightly hesitant. Wei Xi's thin lips parted slightly, and there was a tinge of coldness. The battlefield is chaotic, and the rebels intend to open the city for the Red Lotus group. Isn't it normal for the troops to die in the chaos? If they did not deal with such unstable people as soon as possible, were they supposed to stay for the new year? Qiguan Rang had wanted to leave them for Jiang Pingji to deal with, but Wei Xi's words made sense. The more unstable elements were left, the more risks there would be. It was better to eliminate them completely. Wei Xi thought of something and said, Previously, my lord promised in Shui that after the war, she would give him 10% of his wealth and manpower. Wen Zheng has already screened the captives. Keep the useful ones. It's better to get rid of the others who are stubborn and extreme. Wei Xi did not want Jiang Pingji to get involved in something as damaging as killing captives. It was better to leave this to Shui. Based on Shui's abilities and the Red Lotus group's suicidal style, the latter would definitely step on the former's bottom line. When Shui was done with this group of people, what awaited the Red Lotus group would be killing the donkey after it had outlived its usefulness. Wei Xi did not feel the slightest pain in his conscience to leave this hidden danger to Shui. Qiguan Rang keenly noticed that Wei Xi had stressed the words stubborn and extreme. When choosing captives, most of them were strong, young, and healthy. The old, weak, sick, and disabled were not considered. But Wei Si had made his attitude clear. He did not want those with ideological problems. Their physiques and limbs were in good condition instead. This abnormality made Qiguan Rang curious, but also made him a little more vigilant. Wei Si knew that Qiguan Rang was suspicious, so he explained, the teachings of the Red Lotus group were inherited from a certain evil cult during the period of the 16 Kingdoms. Wen Zheng is well-read, so he naturally knows how many evil cults caused trouble in the early days of the Great Xia dynasty's unification of the 16 Kingdoms. They had risen from the ashes several times, fanned the flames, instigated the common people, and caused chaos. They had a guard against the Red Lotus group. If there's something wrong with your brain, don't take them. This reason could indeed convince Qiguan Rang. Let's not talk about the distant lands. Just the Buddhism and Taoism, which were now on equal footing, had believers all over the 5 countries. The Red Lotus group could not be compared to these 2 giants. However, the 3 were all religions, and they could vaguely see each other's shadows. Although Buddhism and Taoism were not forces in the traditional sense, their influence on the general trend of the world could not be ignored. If the Red Lotus group could have such a large number of believers and incite trouble everywhere, it would indeed be quite annoying. Qiguan Rang nodded in agreement. All right, I'll remember this. This battle could be considered an unprecedented victory. There were a total of more than 23,000 captives. The others were either killed on the spot or died from serious injuries. Those who were still breathing were transported to the military base for treatment. The women's camp temporarily transferred a large number of people, but they were still very busy. Qiguan Rang sent people to clean up the battlefield, clean up the corpses, search for those who were still breathing, and retrieve the arrows that could still be used. Although his lord was a local tycoon, fighting a war was too costly. He had to save as much as he could. In the following days, the busiest place would probably be the medical district. Those with superficial wounds would be fine after they were cleaned and bandaged. After their injuries were healed, they would be able to jump around and receive military merits. Those with broken hands and feet, abdominal cavities opened by barrels, broken bones embedded in internal organs, and large pieces of flesh cut off. The doctors could do nothing about such serious injuries. They could only do their best. Whether the patients lived or died was up to fate. There were also some who could not endure it and died from the pain. In fact, the large number of casualties did not occur on the battlefield, but after the war. Too many people died from serious injuries. Even if they survived, if the wound came into contact with dirt during the healing period, it would easily fester, making the wound unable to heal, and they would die. Fortunately, it was still winter. The temperature was not that hot and humid, and the probability of the wound becoming inflamed and festering was greatly reduced. However, the death rate was still higher than the survival rate. On the other side, Jiang Pengji ordered people to rest for a day before setting out to attack Fenghu County according to the plan. Coincidentally, the day before the attack on Fenghu County was the New Year's Day. Before setting out, Jiang Pengji had already ordered people to buy enough pigs and sheep from the people with money or rice grains of the same amount. On the day of the New Year's Day, the soldiers in charge of the kitchen slaughtered the pigs and sheep. The pig's blood was collected and condensed into blood clots, which were prepared to be used as food. The internal organs were processed, and the stench was removed. They were cooked with ingredients and spices and made into cooked dishes. The pig bones were boiled into a thick white bone soup. The soup base was spices. The smell of the bone broth was so strong that it could almost drift into Fenghu County. As for the other pork and mutton, the various parts were divided. Some were directly boiled in plain water, while some were added with black fungus and stewed into a pot of stew. Just looking at the color made people salivate. Dry-fried pork ribs with salt and pepper, dry-fried pork shreds, kung pao pork cubes, or cut the pork into minced meat and wrapped it into meat buns. In addition to these, there was also some raw meat and cut bamboo sticks. The soldiers could skewer the meat themselves and roast it over the fire. As for the rice prepared by the kitchen, it was cooked with a meat broth that had been prepared beforehand. It's the children's day. Everyone, eat to your heart's content. Those were Jiang Pengji's original words. The march was tough, but such a sumptuous meal was rare even during the New Year. The soldiers formed groups of 3 to 5 and ate their New Year's Eve dinner around the bonfire. There was a rack on the bonfire and a pot was hooked. In the pot, all kinds of mountain products and meat pieces were cooked. The fresh and tender soup made a gurgling sound. When the hot soup and rice entered the stomach, the whole person felt warm. In contrast, Fenghu County was deserted. There were strong troops stationed outside the city. Even though it was New Year's Eve, almost no one celebrated. The most pitiful ones were the soldiers guarding the city. They squatted on the high city wall. The thin and shabby clothes on their bodies did not have much resistance to the cold. Their stomachs were empty. They were so hungry that they were in pain. They were singing the empty city stratagem. Many people could not help but look into the distance. There was the camp that Jiang Pengji's army had set up. They could not see anything else, but they could see the leaping and burning flames. They sniffed hard. There was a faint aroma of food in the air. Even though they were so far away, they seemed to be able to hear the lively sounds coming from there. "It's so good," a soldier guarding the city murmured in a low voice with deep envy. He simulated the taste of delicious food in his mind. The more he thought about it, the more saliva he secreted. Finally, he swallowed his saliva in big mouthfuls. The sound of thunder rumbled in his stomach. In Fenghu County, the leader of the Red Lotus group, who was guarding the city, received a report from outside the city. Chapter 649. Although he wanted to attack at night to teach Jiang Pengji a lesson, the leader of the Red Lotus group also knew that this plan was not feasible. First of all, it was New Year's Eve tonight, but a strong enemy was eyeing them covetously outside the city. No one was in the mood to celebrate. Secondly, the people in the city had been tricked by the Red Lotus group into saving and plundering their wealth. Now, they were penniless. Although they were not as miserable as having no food to eat, the quality of the food was not good. They could not even taste meat on New Year's Eve, which made the festive season even worse. No mood, no vigor, no motivation. Sneak attack the enemy's camp? Haha. Quoting the words of the viewers in the streaming room, even Liang Jingru did not dare to give them the courage. Finally, Jiang Pengji's camp was very unique. It was obvious that she was experienced and could not find a suitable gap for a sneak attack. The soldiers on night patrol did not dare to slack off. Even though it was a lively New Year's Eve, they still had no intention of slacking off. The feasibility of a night attack was not high. This would not work, that would not work. The leader of the Red Lotus group was so angry that he swept the delicacies and wine on the table to the ground. Jiang Pengji dared to delay the attack for a day, so she was naturally not afraid of their night attack. If they dared to come over, she would kindly accept. Alcohol was prohibited in the military camp. Even on New Year's Eve, they were not allowed to touch the smell of alcohol. As the commander-in-chief, Jiang Pengji naturally had to set an example. Drinking plain water was enough. As for rice wine, it was better to fill in the blanks in her head. Jiang Pengji sat in the tent. There were a few plates of side dishes on the table. From the appearance to the taste, it was exactly the same as what the soldiers ate. From the beginning of the New Year's Eve dinner, the viewers in the streaming room uniformly sent Jiang Pengji New Year's blessings. Since the start of the streaming room, many viewers had developed feelings for her by following the stream. Now that they had accompanied Jiang Pengji for another year, many fans in the streaming room even spontaneously organized a New Year's Eve concert. Although she couldn't hear them, she could feel their passion through the dense bullet screen. Looking at the lively streaming room, then looking at the cold commander's tent, she could not help but sigh. This new year is really miserable. Thinking back to last year, we should be eating barbecue and hot pot around the long table by now. Jiang Pengji ate until she was half full. The taste of the big pot was just so. For someone who was used to eating delicacies, it was definitely difficult to swallow, but she was not picky. She ate it all with a normal expression, and there was not a single grain of rice left in the ceramic. I really do not want war during New Year. Yang Si deeply agreed. As a picky foodie, cutting off his delicacies was the same as cutting off one's addiction. When the addiction kicks in, how uncomfortable would it be without hanshi powder? Just ask Feng Zhen, who was weeping after giving up. During the New Year's Eve dinner, Yang Si and Dian Yin sat on either side of the table. Jiang Nongqin was left in Honglian County to hold the fort, so she was not in the tent. Yang Si said with a smile, "Only when there is a comparison can one know who is better. My lord, why don't you think about the thieves in Fenghu County? Maybe your mood will be much better." Jiang Pengji rested her chin on her hand. "By the way, will they attack the camp in the middle of the night?" "The possibility is very small," Yang Si said firmly. "Even so, for the sake of prudence, we still have to strengthen the patrolling and defense of the camp." Setting up a camp was a skill. If the camp was set up well, it would be difficult for the enemy to launch a sneak attack. Jiang Pengji did not do much research in this area. Fortunately, there was Yang Si. He could make up for the shortcomings in this aspect. In addition, the patrols were strict. Even if the Red Lotus group really launched a sneak attack in the middle of the night, they would be able to react quickly. All the soldiers in the camp ate to their heart's content. Delicacies could soothe negative emotions and more or less dispel the depressing atmosphere of the New Year's War. Thinking about conquering the enemy tomorrow, besides some melancholy and longing, they were more excited. Tomorrow was the first day of the new year. If they could conquer Fenghu County, it would be a good start for the whole year. The New Year's Eve dinner lasted until the moon was high in the sky. The soldiers who were not on patrol duty went to bed early to recuperate and fight the next day. The soldiers who were on duty gathered together to frolic, fight, and fight to kill time. Because they did not make much noise, they did not disturb the sleeping others. Jiang Pengji always wore her armor in the military camp. She came out and took a look at the camp. The soldiers she met saluted her. After inquiring about the situation everywhere, Jiang Pengji walked to the front of the camp and looked at the shadow on the ground in the distance. It was like a giant beast. She knew that it was Fenghu County. After conquering Fenghu County and then Qiuyu County, Wanzhou would completely become her territory. She had just taken the first step on the road to hegemony. She meditated and calmed the complicated emotions in her heart. While she meditated and cultivated, she sorted out the clues in her mind and reorganized the plan to unify the world. Not long after, she heard footsteps behind her. She knew who it was at first glance. Jingrong. She spoke in a declarative tone. Yang Si said, "I saw my lord leave the commander's tent just now and come here alone. Do you miss your family?" Jiang Pengji let out an ah and was puzzled. Why would I miss my family? Yang Si choked. He thought that Jiang Pengji was young and that she was alone in a faraway place during the New Year's Eve. Looking at the lively scene around her, it might arouse the young man's longing for his family. He came over to be quite a considerate brother. But why didn't he follow the script? Understanding what Yang Si meant, Jiang Pengji did not know whether to laugh or cry. "I'm an adult, not a 3-year-old child." It was Yang Si's turn to be dumbfounded. "Then my lord is now." Her eyes were firm. "I'm meditating and sorting out the plan. After we take down Qingde County, we'll take a short break and go to rescue the king." Rescue the king. I don't know how many heroes we'll meet then. Whether they're enemies or allies, we'll be invincible if we know ourselves and our enemies. Yang Si responded with an "oh" and was slightly embarrassed. Just as he was about to find an excuse to leave so as not to disturb Jiang Pengji's thoughts, his lord raised a very strange question. "Jingrong, I had a strange dream last night. I dreamed that a hen crowed and heralded the dawn." Yang Si frowned. "A hen heralding the dawn? Isn't this a woman usurping the dawn? It's a sign of disaster. However, the dream is strange and doesn't count." He was a little worried. Did the Lord think that the dream was ominous and that there would be changes in the battle tomorrow? Don't be superstitious. A woman usurping the dawn. People often use this as a metaphor for a woman usurping power and creating chaos in the world. It's a bad omen, Jiang Pengji said and lowered her eyes. "What do you think of this?" Yang Si was surprised. How did the topic turn to this? He was also a rebellious person. His thoughts were very different from the literati of the time. He said, "In my opinion, a woman usurping the dawn and a woman in power are still different. The crow of a hen is against the natural order and common sense. But it's not the case for a woman in power. Looking at the 16 countries in the previous dynasty, it's not like there haven't been women in power and being officials for hundreds of years. If a woman usurps the dawn, it's an insult to the ancestors." There was a period of time in the previous dynasty when women were officials and were in power. However, as times changed, the atmosphere became more and more rigorous and harsh. The narrow term, "a woman usurping the dawn," was recognized by more and more people. More people felt that it was ridiculous for a woman to be in power. It was like a woman usurping the dawn. Jiang Pengji smiled and said, "What if a woman becomes the emperor in the world? Do you think it's normal?" Yang Si had a strange expression on his face. His lord was not only ambitious, but her confidence was also rare in the world. He smiled and asked quietly, "Listening to what you mean, my lord, do you want to pass the throne to your daughter after you become the emperor? It's not necessarily impossible." Chapter 650. Not necessarily? This was probably the funniest joke Yang Si had heard in a while. At this point, he still thought that Jiang Pengji was joking with him. He went with the flow and teased, "If that's the case, my lord has to work harder." Jiang Pengji raised her eyebrows and asked him, "What do you mean work harder? My lord is about to turn 9 soon, and it's only 2 years before she turns 20. In other people's families, even if they didn't get married, the marriage would have already been decided. On the other hand, the lord was still alone. This was not acceptable. If I don't marry a wife, how can I have a daughter? If he didn't have a daughter, how could he pass the throne to his daughter?" Yang Si teased with a smile. His words were not to encourage Jiang Pengji to work hard to fight for the throne. He was clearly teasing her, telling her to quickly get married and have children. Jiang Pengji would be 18 in 2 months. 18 was old enough to start a family and become a father in that era. However, rich families were particular about many things. Most of them would delay it until after the coronation ceremony. The Lu residence should not be an exception. In Yang Si's opinion, his lord was still a young and immature youth who had not come into contact with the matters between men and women. When he was of age, he would naturally think about it. However, according to Yang Si's script, after being teased like this, his lord should be blushing and her heart palpitating. She would be extremely embarrassed. In fact, Jiang Pengji raised her eyebrows and said calmly, "Well, there's no rush. Bearing children depends on the partner and the timing." Yang Si was surprised. From the looks of it, his lord wasn't an innocent young man who didn't understand human relations. He was clearly an experienced veteran. He gossiped, "Depends on the partner and the timing? Could it be that my lord has taken a fancy to someone?" Jiang Pengji's lips curled into a mysterious smile. "Indeed," Yang Si asked curiously, "Which family is she from?" If their statuses were comparable, they could ask the old master to come forward and arrange the marriage for their lord. This was a major event in his life, so he couldn't afford to be careless. The faster the hand, the slower the hand, the faster the hand, the stronger the hand. That was the only logical thing to do. If his status was lower than the lord, he could send an iceman to the door and explain his intention to take a concubine. In short, it's best not to miss out on a young lady you like. Jiang Pengji laughed involuntarily. She didn't know that apart from being gluttonous, Yang Si also had a tendency to gossip. Amused, she rolled her eyes and said vaguely, "Status. Although my family is in decline, I have a clean background. My ancestors were once illustrious, so I can be considered a noble family. That person is quite talented, and her personality is quite cute. It's not fair to be a concubine." Yang Si frowned. A noble family. This was indeed a little difficult. Better be a poor man's wife than a rich man's concubine. The nobler the family, the more importance they placed on their status. She would rather choose her husband's wife who was of the same birth as her. Very few people were willing to be a concubine in order to climb up the social ladder, unless her husband's family was of a higher status. Obviously, Lucy had not reached that level yet. What does Lord like about her? Yang Si asked. Talent or appearance? Jiang Pengji smiled and squinted her eyes. His genes. Chicken sound? Yang Si couldn't wrap his head around it. The curve was too big, and he almost flipped over. Was a rooster's voice. Jiang Pengji pinched her chin. How could she explain this? She couldn't. Genes. They're the most essential thing in life. Jiang Pengji thought about it and muttered. But genes are only one aspect. His genes are indeed very attractive to me. But what interests me is his temperament and the secrets he hides. How do I describe that feeling? He's obviously full of loopholes, and it's no different from burying his head in the sand, but he still stubbornly wants to hide it. He looks so cute. Yang Si was dumbfounded. He could understand every word that his lord said, but when they were put together, he couldn't understand them. Jiang Pengji concluded. He's easy to bully. I like to bully him, but he's tolerant and doesn't do anything. What I like can only be mine. Yang Si was so shocked that he couldn't speak. After a while, he broke out in laughter. Lord, if you really like the young lady, you can't do this. It's easy to scare her. Previously, he thought that his lord was a skilled and knowledgeable veteran. Now that he saw it, he was clearly a domineering young man who didn't understand love. Jiang Pengji asked him, How should I pursue her? Yang Si thought about it and said, If my lord really likes her, why don't you discuss it with the old master and ask him to come forward and propose marriage? Since she's from a noble family, she's probably well educated. Although my lord's actions show that you like her, in the eyes of the young lady, it's clearly frivolous and flirting. Even if my lord is very good, after such actions, the young lady's impression of my lord will at most be 1 or 2 points. Jiang Pengji clicked her tongue, somewhat disapproving. He's quite open-minded by nature. He shouldn't misunderstand, right? That's not necessarily true. Yang Si added, Young girls are meticulous and tend to get into a dead end. Jiang Pengji rested her chin on her hand and thought about it. She said, Is that so? Listen, Jing Rong is quite experienced. Yang Si sneered. He had eaten more than 10 years of rice than Jiang Pengji. How could he not know? If my lord asks Zishur, he's more experienced. However, he's an unruly wastrel. I don't recommend adopting his suggestion. Yang Si conveniently smeared Feng Zhen's name. Who asked Feng Zhen to be so wastrel? Jiang Pengji thought for a long time. Finally, she said, It's still early. Let's talk about it in another 5 or 6 years. I'm not in a hurry. I'm quite enjoying my current state. Yang Si did not suspect anything strange. In his opinion, the young lady that his lord liked was estimated to be only 11 or 12 years old. In another 5 or 6 years, she would be the right age to marry. As a man, he should prioritize his family, country, and career. It was fine for his lord to get married a little later. It was fine if he fell in love with someone else after a few years. A man would not have to worry about not having a wife. Little did he know that under Jiang Pengji's deliberate guidance, the content of their conversation was completely different. It was clearly a chicken talking to a duck, but they could still talk about the same thing. In that case, I'll wait for my lord's little princess to come to this world. Yang Si smiled and teased. Jiang Pengji said, Deal. I just hope that you won't cry when the time comes. Before dawn broke, Jiang Pengji returned to her tent to take a nap. When the golden light pierced through the thick clouds and shone on the earth, the sound of a horn sounded in the camp. Not far away, the people of Fenghu County, who had been in fear all night, felt as if they had been electrocuted. They were so scared that their hair stood on end. Jiang Pengji gathered the troops and arranged them in battle formation outside the city. The cold wind whistled and the banners fluttered. One side's morale was high, while the other side was increasingly depressed. When the war drums sounded, the archers responded with arrows to cover the scaling ladders. The soldiers hid under the scaling ladders and pushed the scaling ladders closer to the city walls. Because of the urgency of the march and the limited supplies they could carry, they did not bring catapults to attack the city this time. Relying on the cover of waves of arrows, corpses continued to fall from the city walls, and the scaling ladders were successfully placed on the city walls. When the leader of the Red Lotus group heard the war drums outside the city, he hurriedly put on his armor and climbed up the city walls. An arrow that flew over almost pierced the bun on the top of his head. Why are they fighting now? The leader glared angrily. The enemies below the city walls were densely packed, one group after another. His scalp tingled when he saw them. Chapter 651. We can't defend. The dull sound of arrows piercing flesh, the wails and screams of the battlefield, and the buzzing sound of arrows piercing through the air. The incomparably noisy sounds converged into a symphony of death. The soldier's head was covered in blood, and after he finished speaking with tears in his eyes, an arrow pierced through his chest. Smash them all. Smash them down. We must not let these rebels climb up the city wall. The leader of the Red Lotus group shrank in the back, his face full of fear. He roared at the top of his lungs as he pushed the others to the front line. We have to defend, even if we can't. Whoever dares to retreat will be killed. The best way to deal with enemies climbing the ladders was to use heavy objects or sharp weapons to hit their vital points or hands. The defending side did not even need to kill them on the spot. They only needed to get them down from the ladders. The height of the city wall alone was enough to kill them. However, Yangtze was very cunning. He let the soldiers carry thick shields and pretend to climb the ladders. They did not need to climb too high. They only needed to climb halfway to lure the Red Lotus group on the city wall. When they attacked the soldiers climbing the ladders with stones or other sharp weapons, the archers below the city wall would specifically shoot at those soldiers. The war drums were like thunder. The strong sound of the drums resounded through the sky, stirring the blood in one's chest and causing it to surge. Jiang Pengji rode on Lil White's back. Her red clothes and silver armor were particularly conspicuous under the sun. She frowned and said, "Jing Rong, although your lord has some spare money, I'm not as rich as a country. Can you be more diligent and thrifty?" The arrows were not endless. From her point of view, every wave of arrows that were shot out was like shining silver. It would be fine if they could successfully attack the city, but if they could not attack it for the time being, those arrows could not be recovered. Even if some could be recovered after cleaning up the battlefield, the arrows would also be used up. Every time they fought, they would lose 10 to 20% of their arrows. It was so expensive that it hurt. Yangtze smiled and said, "Wait a little longer. When their morale has completely collapsed, this city wall of a few feet will be easily breached." Jiang Pengji secretly rolled her eyes. She clamped Little White's belly. "Go!" Little White roared and rushed to the battlefield at the speed of lightning. Yangtze was about to raise his hand to stop it, but Little White had already carried the people away, leaving only the dust it raised. As they galloped, Jiang Pengji removed the bow and arrow from the back of the horse. For this bow, pulling the bowstring to a full moon would require more than 2 stones of strength. He knocked an arrow and drew his bow, aiming at the flag fluttering in the wind. A silver light pierced through the air. The arrow carried with it an unstoppable momentum. With a dong sound, it pierced through the flagpole, and the huge flag fell down with a loud bang. If he wanted to completely crush their morale, why did he need to waste so much time? Either they would take the head of the enemy general, or they would cut down their flag. These were both ways to thoroughly humiliate the enemy and destroy their morale. Yangtze saw the fallen flag of the Red Lotus group and laughed involuntarily. He adjusted his plan and attacked the city with all his might. The Red Lotus group on the city wall had basically lost their will to fight. After paying a small price, Jiang Pengji's soldiers carried their thick shields and climbed up the city wall one after another. The two sides were engaged in a chaotic battle. The scene was chaotic and bloody. It was like a Jura hell, making people lose all rationality. Amidst the chaos, the city gates opened wide. Jiang Pengji held the long spear in her hand and rode her horse into the city. They fought from early morning until noon, and it was as if the white clouds in the sky were dyed scarlet. If someone surrendered, their hands were tied. If they resisted, they were killed on the spot. In less than half a month, the situation in Cheongda County had undergone earth-shattering changes. At this point, Jinmen County, Fenghu County, and Red Lotus County were all included in Jiang Pengji's territory. Qiyu County is still missing. After the war, Yangtze sent people to clean up the battlefield and settle the wounded soldiers, the bodies of the dead soldiers, and the prisoners of war. We could finally breathe a sigh of relief. Jiang Pengji had already washed up and taken off her heavy armor. She was sitting in the main hall, drinking tea and resting. Yangtze was so busy that his feet barely touched the ground. Even the clothes he was wearing were from 2 days ago. He had no time to wash up and tidy up. Yes, we're still missing Qiyu County. Why don't you wait quietly for a few more days, my lord? Wait for the Red Lotus group to fight internally and exhaust each other? Jiang Pengji frowned and said, I want to wait, but I can't wait to rescue the emperor. Yangtze was also helpless. If it weren't for the rescue of the emperor, they would have waited until the beginning of spring before attacking Qingde County. Now, they were forced to start a war a few days before the New Year's Day. It was one thing for the soldiers to be unable to celebrate the festival with their families, but some of them had to sacrifice their lives. Jiang Pengji continued, Sooner or later, the Red Lotus group will be annexed. Sitting idly by and watching them exhaust each other in their internal strife is tantamount to exhausting our strength. Yangtze was so choked that he couldn't speak. The meaning of his lord's words was clear. The Red Lotus group will be mine sooner or later. The more internal strife they have now, the more losses I will suffer when I obtain it. However, the Red Lotus group is not completely finished yet. Is it really okay for my lord to be so concerned about it? Take a break and reorganize. Send troops to Qiyu County. Yes, Jiang Pengji, Qiguan Rang, and the others deliberately blocked the news. The Red Lotus group received the news relatively late. How late was it? She had already conquered Fenghu County. The Red Lotus group in Qiyu County was still in a standoff inside and outside the city, cursing incessantly. In order to stall for time, Shui racked his brains to give advice to the second-in-command of the Red Lotus group. Compared to the twisted intestines of a top strategist, Shui could be considered honest and straightforward. Compared to the brainless boorish men of the Red Lotus group, Shui felt that his IQ could crush everyone present. With his help, the second-in-command deceived the city gates of Qiyu County into opening and captured it. After capturing Qiyu County, he was about to dispatch troops to Honglian County, but the troops were blocked at the city gates. The people who surrounded them were none other than the military counselor of the Red Lotus group. The scholar personally led the troops and surrounded Qiyu County. As he cursed, he asked the second-in-command to return the leader. The two sides confronted each other and were in a stalemate. Shui took the opportunity to sow discord and upset the balance between the two sides. War was on the verge of breaking out. As for him, for the sake of his life, Shui had packed his luggage early and fled with a few of his brothers amid the chaos, slipping away. The second-in-command and the scholar's eyes were bloodshot. How could they have noticed Shui's existence? When they discovered that Shui had escaped and vanished from the face of the earth, news of Honglian County and Qiyu County successively being conquered arrived. What? Honglian County has been lost? When did this happen? The second-in-command stood up in shock. Because he had risen in such a hurry, he felt dizzy and almost fainted from anger. The soldier who had delivered the news was pale as he stammered out the time. When the second-in-command heard this, his eyes rolled back and his sturdy body collapsed to the ground. Everyone panicked. They pinched and slapped him. After a while, they finally woke him up. How? How is this possible? The second-in-command felt as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. The coldness seeped into his bones. If the intelligence was correct, Honglian County had fallen on the same day that he had arrived at Qiyu County. The guards of Honglian County were not weak. How could Thief Lu attack Honglian County without making a sound? Moreover, it had been a few days since it had been conquered. Why did the news only arrive now? Chapter 652. Although the scholar wasn't smart, he wasn't completely brainless. I want some time alone. This is a trap. What's wrong? The scholar gritted his teeth in pain. He felt nauseous, and sweat oozed out of his pores. His mind was muddled, like a messy ball of yarn that couldn't be cut. He couldn't find any clues. Faced with this situation, the scholar subconsciously wanted to ask Shui for advice. No, Shui. The scholar felt a flash of inspiration in his mind. His blocked and muddled mind suddenly became clear. He knew what was wrong. It was Shui. The scholar gripped the handrail tightly, barely supporting his body from falling. His eyes were fierce and full of murderous intent. He gritted his teeth and found someone to secretly contact Shui. If Shui hadn't offered several strategies, how could the situation be like this? This scoundrel seemed to be thinking for the Red Lotus group, but in reality, he had hidden evil intentions. He wanted to kill the entire group. This was probably the smartest moment of the scholar's life. Many seemingly inconspicuous details became abnormally clear. Shui had initially determined that Lu Shi and his group would attack Fenghu County first because the mountain road to Fenghu County was short, making it convenient for a sneak attack. And the result? The scholar believed in Shui's inference and withdrew the garrison of Jinmen County. He guarded Fenghu County with fear and trepidation, but the result was that Jinmen County was lost that night. The 3,000 soldiers sent by the scholar to ambush failed and were seen through by Lu Shi. In the end, they suffered a double loss. Before Jinmen County fell, Shui went to Red Lotus County. Not long after, the second-in-command betrayed the leader and occupied Red Lotus County. After that, the scholar received a secret letter from Shui. The letter told him that the leader of the Red Lotus group had been captured by the second-in-command and taken to Qiyu County. The scholar had no choice but to split his troops into two. One would attack Jinmen County, and the other would rush to Qiyu County to save the leader. When the scholar led his troops and the second-in-command's rebel army in Qiyu County confronted each other and restrained each other, Red Lotus County fell, and Fenghu County was taken. It seemed that not only had Shui played him, but the stupid second-in-command had also been played by Shui. Without Shui's secret help, how could Red Lotus County have fallen so quickly? Understanding this, the scholar felt a sweetness in his throat. The taste of iron rose from his throat, and he fainted from anger. Military counselor. Counselor. Military advisor. Advisor? Someone called the doctor over. The scholar's face was pale, and his body was on the verge of collapse. It was a heart-wrenching sight. When he spat out a mouthful of blood, his eyes rolled back, and he collapsed to the ground, scaring the crowd even more. The scene was chaotic and out of control. As for the culprit behind all this, seeing that the situation was not good, Shui had already used the cicada shedding carapace to escape with his sworn brothers. The dark-faced man asked in a low, muffled voice, "Big brother, do you think that Lu Shi will keep his promise?" Shui was wearing a large winter cloak. He stood outside the cave and looked into the distance. His eyes seemed to pierce through the mountains and land on Qiyu County. Lu Shi will keep his promise. I don't think he would dare. Big brother has been so busy with Lu Shi's affairs these past few days that he's lost weight. The corners of Shui's lips curled up, and a sharpness appeared in his eyes. His previous dispiritedness had been swept away, and he vaguely carried a trace of high spirits that he hadn't seen in a long time. He knew very well how many troops the Red Lotus group had. There were at least 50,000 captives that Lu Shi had captured. According to the agreement of 10 men and horses, Shui could get 5,000 to 6,000 men and horses, as well as a generous sum of provisions and money. With these assets, Shui also had the capital to join the rescue of the emperor in Dongqing. If it was done properly, he might be able to borrow more troops and rope in more top talents. When that time came, he must kill his way back to his homeland and make the traitors of the 4 factions of Nanman pay with their blood. Thinking of this, countless scattered scenes flashed before his eyes. Each scene was filled with terrified screams, spreading blood, crying of despair, the wanton laughter of the enemy, the raised butcher's knife, rolling heads, broken limbs, and scattered internal organs. Since he was born, Shui had been the noble son of the family. He was the favored son of God that everyone sought after. When had he ever suffered such humiliation? These were the sins of the 4 factions of Nanman. Naturally, they had to be paid with blood. As long as Shui was still alive, he would never let go of this hatred. With him, there would be no Nan Man. And Shui's sworn brothers looked at each other. They knew that their eldest brother was beginning to reminisce about the past again. They had just conquered the 3 districts of Red Lotus, Fenghu, and Jinmen, and their foundations were not yet stable. The Red Lotus Group had been developing in Chengde County for many years and had many brainless believers. In order not to fail, Jiang Pengji ordered Qiguan Rang and the others to consolidate their foundations and integrate the troops. At the same time, they had a deeper understanding of the situation in the 3 districts. They had to understand the ins and outs of the situation so that they could prescribe the right medicine in the future. After all, brainless believers were in the minority. Most of the people still followed blindly. The former was incurable, but the latter could still be saved. For the common people, it didn't matter who the officials were. What mattered was whether the officials could bring them a good life, whether they could provide them with a place of protection in this chaotic world. As long as they understood the problems of the people in the 3 districts and prescribed the right medicine, they would know that following Jiang Pengji was far more promising than following the Red Lotus Group. The people would naturally submit to her. Of course, the Red Lotus Group's methods of brainwashing its believers inspired Jiang Pengji. The Red Lotus Group could use deals and propaganda to discredit others and build momentum for the sacred group. Naturally, Jiang Pengji could do the same. This method could also be used in the military camp to teach loyalty to the soldiers. Hadn't the audience in the live stream recommended the position of political commissar to her? However, the position of political commissar required someone with a certain level of knowledge. What Jiang Pengji lacked the most at the moment was intermediate talents, so she could only put this plan aside. However, there was no need for such high-end talents to brainwash the people, and there was no need to wait for the implementation in the future. During the period of rest and reorganization, Jiang Pengji was not idle. Jingrong, come over and take a look. What do you think of this nursery rhyme? Jiang Pengji was dressed in brown linen clothes. Her long hair draped over her shoulders without a crown. She looked a little unrestrained and romantic. It was extremely rude and unrestrained to go out and meet guests without a crown. It was almost equivalent to sitting in front of others. However, looking at her long jet black hair that was still damp, it seemed that she had just taken a bath. Yang Si swallowed the words that he was about to blurt out and said, "The weather is cold now. How can my lord not take care of your body?" The colder the weather was, the more important it was to keep warm. Jiang Pengji grabbed her long wet hair and raised her eyelids carelessly. "My body is very good. I don't have any minor disasters or illnesses all year round. Moreover, there's a charcoal brazier in the house, so it's very warm." After she finished speaking, she handed the roll of bamboo slips in her hand to Yang Si. Yang Si took it and looked at it. "What is this? This is the nursery rhyme?" The handwriting on the bamboo slips was vigorous and powerful. The words were written in bold and flamboyant calligraphy. One could not help but sigh with emotion. The words were like the person. Chapter 653. In Jiang Pengji's opinion, those stubborn believers were like ticking time bombs. They must not be allowed to live. However, what about those weak-willed fence-sitters? Could Jiang Pengji kill them all one by one? Obviously, this was impossible. Since they were fence-sitters, why not pull them over to her side? I plan to let the child beggars in the 3 counties sing this nursery rhyme everywhere. I don't believe that the Red Lotus Group can cause any trouble. In fact, this nursery rhyme was the result of a discussion between Jiang Pengji and the 150,000 idle spectators. It was simple, easy to understand, and catchy. With Jiang Pengji's manipulation behind the scenes, she was not afraid that it would not be sung well enough. Even if the illiterate old woman heard it, she could easily understand the meaning behind it. Yang Si thought about it carefully. It was indeed feasible. Most of the people were ignorant and did not have their own judgment. If the Lord killed all the stubborn believers of the Red Lotus Group in a thunderous manner, it would inevitably provoke a crusade from the outside world. They would say that the Lord was cruel and heartless. In this way, The Red Lotus group would be whitewashed and become a White Lotus that was bullied by evil forces. The real good people would be attacked by the common people. Instead of that, it was better to occupy the moral high ground. Jiang Pingji could not portray herself as a weak person, but she could portray herself as a savior of noble character and unquestionable integrity. Yangxi's eyes flickered slightly. He thought about it and borrowed a brush and ink to write another nursery rhyme on the bamboo slip. The nursery rhyme Jiang Pingji wrote was to expose the Red Lotus group, while the nursery rhyme Yangxi wrote was to eulogize Fengyi County. In Yangxi's opinion, it was not enough to attack and expose the evil deeds of the Red Lotus group in Chengde County and let the people see the true colors of the Red Lotus group. They had to add fuel to the fire. Would they follow the Red Lotus group and be exploited and bullied, or would they follow Lu Shi and live a good life? Obviously, one would know which to choose even if they thought with their toes. In just 2 or 3 days, the 2 nursery rhymes spread from Fenghu County to Honglian County and Jinmen County. They could be heard in the streets and alleys. At first, it was just child beggars and naughty children who liked to join in on the fun. Later, there were some people who had been exploited by the Red Lotus group and had a hard time surviving. Although it had not been long since they were sung, the situation in the city had obviously improved a lot. The most obvious point was that there were fewer brainless believers who tormented them. Qiguan Rang often breathed a sigh of relief. Without the foolish people who were tormenting him, he could also put his extra effort elsewhere. Now, the main force of the Red Lotus group was gathered in Qiyu County. This was a tough nut to crack. It would not be as easy to take down as the previous 3 counties. If they wanted to take down Qiyu County, they had to concentrate their forces. Otherwise, it would be too difficult. Qiguan Rang, Wei Ci, and Yangxi tacitly chose the captives they could use and sent them back to Fengyi County in batches. Most of the people were sent to mine, open up wastelands, build roads, or build houses. It would be a waste not to use free human resources. According to Jiang Pengji's previous plan, these captives would have a 6-month probation period. If they performed well, they might even be able to enter the Minton district under Wei Ci's jurisdiction. They would be allocated farmland and become a Minton soldier. They would be able to get 60% or 70% of the crops they grew. Of course, during the half-year probation period, Jiang Pengji also took care of their food and lodging, but she only cared about their food and did not care about their well-being. She did not pay them any salary. In order to appease the captives and prevent them from causing trouble on the way, these welfare conditions had been agreed upon in advance. However, the captives were still trembling with fear. They felt that Jiang Pengji's words were meant to deceive them. As the victor, it was fine that she did not kill the captives to reduce their rations. Would she be so kind as to take care of their food and lodging? With trepidation and fear for the outside world, these captives were sent to Fengyi County in batches. Su Ku and the others worked day and night, but before they could finish what they were doing, a large pile of official duties fell from the sky with the arrival of the captives. They had no choice but to grab able-bodied men everywhere to share the official duties. Otherwise, when Jiang Pengji returned from the battle, they would probably only see the lush weeds on their graves. The women's department in the government office had the most profound experience. Among them, there was a girl with a plump figure. She had lost a lot of weight in the past few days. She had gone from cute baby fat to a bony beauty. Not only that, but the supervisor of the women's department in the government office, Sheng Wanwan, also grabbed Feng Jin's wife, Wei Jingxian, to be an able-bodied man. Wan Er's good sister. Anyway, Master Feng has allowed you to go out and broaden your horizons. This day will come sooner or later. Let's not be reserved. Wei Jingxian could not let go of the lively and active Changsheng, but she could not stand Sheng Wan's constant pestering. Fortunately, Changsheng was obedient. She sat beside her seriously during the day and did not cry or make a fuss. When she was hungry, she asked for food from the maids. When she was bored, she hugged her and nibbled on her feet or chubby little hands. She entertained herself and had fun. Even Wei Jingxian was grabbed for able-bodied men. What excuse did the others have for not working hard? Feng Zhen, who had always loved to have fun, was now so tired that even his occasional addiction had disappeared, not to mention drinking and finding beauties. Sure enough, he was busy for a while, then busy for a year. What 7 days off, eating, drinking, and having fun were all lies. Even on the night of the new year, he hugged a stack of official documents to sleep. He was not a warm and fragrant lady. To prevent the captives from causing trouble, they were not gathered in one place. Instead, they were scattered and sent to different places. There were more than 30,000 captives. It sounded like a lot, but the number of people sent to different places was not that many. There was only to worry about them causing trouble. When the gentry in Shangyang County heard the news, they all kept quiet out of fear. A strong sense of crisis spread in their hearts. If they caused less trouble, Feng Jin and Feng Zhen would naturally be much more relaxed. On the other side of the story, while Jiang Pengji was secretly promoting nursery rhymes, she was gathering her troops. She was valiantly and energetically marching towards Chiayu County. Excluding the troops stationed in the 3 counties, Jiang Pengji had only 8,000 elite troops at her disposal. With 8,000 troops, the Red Lotus Group in Chiayu County had 40,000 to 50,000 troops. It would be fine if the Red Lotus Group continued with their internal strife, but if they worked together to resist the foreign enemy, Jiang Pengji would have a hard time. The Red Lotus Group's troops were 5 to 6 times hers, and they had the advantage of defending the city. As the attacking party, she was at a great disadvantage. If the Red Lotus Group defended the city and did not come out, she could only retreat in defeat in the end. It was not that she had too few troops to defeat them, but that she had too little time. There was a deadline for rescuing the Emperor, and she could not afford to delay it. However, if the Red Lotus Group continued with their internal strife, Jiang Pengji could take advantage of the situation. The military advisor of the Red Lotus Group had been fooled by Shui. He had finally sobered up from his rage. He immediately sent out an envoy to try to negotiate peace with the second-in-command. The most important thing now was to unite the forces of the Red Lotus Group and fight against the traitor Liu together. They should not allow the outsiders to take advantage of the internal strife. The second-in-command hesitated and did not agree immediately. Jiang Pengji was frowning in the tent. If the Red Lotus Group really unified and they were determined to defend the city and not leave, it would indeed be difficult. At that moment, the guard sent a message. Wei Xi was outside, requesting an audience. Jiang Pengji said calmly, "Invite him in." Wei Xi had come with a solution for Jiang Pengji. "I hope that my lord will allow me to persuade the rebels of the Red Lotus Group to surrender." Jiang Pengji's eyebrows twitched fiercely. Was he tired of living to persuade them at a time like this? She did not object immediately, but her expression showed that she did not agree. Wei Xi pursed his lips and did not speak. He looked straight into her eyes. Chapter 654. Jiang Pengji had thought that Wei Xi would back down, but she seemed to have underestimated this guy. He could be so stubborn. You should know very well what kind of people the Red Lotus Group is. You're going to lobby them at this time. Wei Zixiao, do you think your life is too long? The Red Lotus Group doesn't care about no killing of envoys when 2 armies clash. If I were in their shoes, I would be the first to kill whoever dares to send someone to lobby me at this juncture. Jiang Pengji's voice fluctuated a little. She asked, "Are you really not afraid of death?" Wei Xi smiled instead of getting angry. His expression softened a lot, as if he had a soft light filter. He said, "Of course I'm afraid." It was human nature to be afraid of death. Even though Wei Xi had been reborn, every time he thought of the scene of him drawing his sword to commit suicide, he still felt a trembling fear. However, if he could turn back time once, he would still choose to do so. Life was indeed precious, but to Wei Xi, some things were more important than it. It's good that you're afraid. Take good care of your life. Jiang Pengji didn't even look up. She gestured for Wei Xi to leave. Wei Xi said, "It's precisely because I'm afraid that my life and the lives of the people are worthy of respect. I am confident that I can convince the enemy leader. If I succeed, the casualties of our soldiers will be greatly reduced. It's true that my lord is brave and good at fighting. There are few opponents in the world, but the enemy has a large number of troops and the city walls as a barrier. They can advance to attack and retreat to defend. If they defend the city and deliberately delay time, even my lord will have a big headache. While the enemy is still divided, I think that sowing discord and instigating defection is the best way. At present, the Red Lotus group was still divided and hostile. They still had a chance. If the Red Lotus group put aside their former enmity and joined forces to fight against the enemy, Jiang Pengji's side couldn't afford to delay at all. They needed to seize the opportunity to fight a war, and the same was true of strategy. If they delayed for a while, and the Red Lotus group became harmonious, it would be too late. Jiang Pengji was a little annoyed. She pondered for a while and finally made a decision. If you can guarantee that you'll come back alive, I'll allow you to try. Wei Si's face was filled with joy. Even his eyes were a little brighter. However, the audience in the streaming room was going crazy. Beauty CI is out of her mind and wants to court death. Host, how can you not stop her? AID not enough. The Red Lotus group is a group of bandits. They don't have the habit of not killing envoys when two armies cross swords. If they see that Samiran is good-looking but not strong in martial arts, what if they develop crooked thoughts? Host, why didn't you stop him to the end? Who wants to add drama? The streamer has taken over 3 territories of the Red Lotus group. They hate the streamer to the core now. If Beauty CI goes over, won't he be a ready-made punching bag? If it were any other force, I wouldn't be very worried. However, if it were the Red Lotus group, I would be very nervous. This chapter's message. The key is that Wei CI wants to go. The host tried to stop him, but he was determined. What do you expect the host to do? The viewers in the streaming room were worried about Jiang Pengji, but she would not make decisions for him just because she was worried. Perhaps her worry seemed to Wei CI that she didn't trust his abilities, so when Wei CI insisted, she chose to respect him. After obtaining permission, Wei CI changed into a simple and plain Confucian robe and left the military camp with only a few guards. That night, the second-in-command got up from his concubine in irritation. He was about to call for hot water to take a bath when the footsteps of a messenger came from outside. Second-in-command, there's a group of people outside who claim to be messengers sent by Lu Shi. They want to discuss important matters with you. The second-in-command was halfway through putting on his clothes when he froze on the spot. After a while, he reacted and revealed a malicious smile. Lu Shi actually sent people over. Interesting. I want to see who is so unafraid of death. Let them in. I'll go over right away. The second-in-command took a battle bath and changed into a new set of clothes. He tidied himself up and went to meet the messengers sent by Lu Shi. When he entered the main hall, he saw a young man in a dark green Confucian robe sitting on the table. His sitting posture was standard and his back was straight. The hall was brightly lit. The candlelight swayed and the light flickered. The young man's long, dark hair was tied into a jade crown. He was meticulous, and the color of his hair made his already delicate skin look even fairer. His eyebrows were straight, his eyes were like dots of paint, and the bridge of his nose was high. No matter who saw him, they would praise him. What a handsome gentleman with red lips and white teeth. The young man seemed to have sensed movement outside the hall. He looked in the direction of the sound. Seeing the fierce-looking second-in-command, he looked calm. It was as if he was not in the enemy's camp, but in his own courtyard. He was drinking alone at a table. The second-in-command gathered his thoughts and strode to the seat of honor. He sat down in a dignified manner and said in a thunderous voice, "You were sent by Lu Shi to persuade me?" He wanted to call Jiang Pengji Lu Shi, but the second-in-command did not know the young man's specific purpose, so he showed mercy. Wei Si bowed and said calmly, "No, my lord sent me here to point out a way for you to survive." As soon as he opened his mouth, the second-in-command's murderous intent gradually surged. He sneered, "Point out a way for me to survive?" Exactly. Wei Si was not afraid at all. He said, "You are entrenched in Qiyu district and have 30,000 strong troops. You seem to be at the peak of your power But don't forget that there are two strong enemies outside the city. Once the two besiege the city, how long do you think you can resist according to the reserves in the city? If Wei Si try to persuade him and put himself in a lower position, the second in command would only be more arrogant and think more highly of himself. He was here to instigate the second in command. The two of them should be on equal footing. Therefore, even though he was in the enemy's camp, Wei Si did not lower his aura at all. The second in command snorted. His eyes were as fierce as a wolf's. He stared at Wei Si's neck as if thinking of how to break it. The second in command was disdainful and said in a rough voice, "Although I have conflicts with the sacred sect, behind closed doors, we are all family. No matter what, Lu Shi is still an outsider. In this world, who would help an outsider instead of helping their own family?" Wei Si said coldly, "Family? Are you referring to your own family who will be killed when the time comes?" The second in command's face turned green. Wei Si continued, "You should thank my lord. If not for my lord, based on your rebellious behavior, how could the Red Lotus Group allow you to survive? What you said just now is right. Broken bones are still connected. How can a family have overnight hatred?" When it came to distorting the truth, the counselors under Jiang Pengji were all outstanding. Their ability to secretly change the concept was superb. It was clearly Jiang Pengji who had forced the Red Lotus Group to fall apart. In Wei Si's words, Jiang Pengji had become a benefactor. Chapter 655. The second in command's face was livid. That feeling was as if the hidden thoughts in one's heart had been exposed and laid out under the sun. Inexplicably shameful. So what? I can also wait for Lu Shi and the Red Lotus Group to suffer heavy losses, Wei Si sneered. My lord controls most of Fengyi County, Shangyang County, and Qingda County. In the vast Wanzhou, there is only Chuyu County left. With such strength, how could both sides suffer? To put it bluntly, does the general think that he can run amok and ignore the heroes of the world just by relying on a mere 100,000 followers of the Red Lotus Parish? Don't you know? Previously, the Red Lotus Group had split its army of 36,000 to attack Jinmen County. There were less than 8,000 guards in Jinmen County. What was the result? They were routed like a mountain and captured more than 30,000 people. In that case, does the general still think that the Red Lotus Group can compete with my master? The second in command's eyes flickered with hesitation and struggle, as well as lingering fear. Just as Wei Si had mocked him, he was like a frog in a well, looking at the sky. He thought that the Red Lotus Group had defeated the Tsing-Yi army and made them flee like rats, so they were already the overlord of the north. However, Wei Si told him that the Red Lotus Group was actually very weak. They had 36,000 troops, but they were still defeated by 7,000 troops. This example was true, and he could not refute it. 36,000 soldiers were no match for 7,000. The 30,000 soldiers in the city did not give him any sense of security. Whether he chose to rely on the Red Lotus Group or sit back and watch the fierce battle between the Red Lotus Group and Jiang Pengji, he would not have a good ending. Wei Si softened his voice to avoid pressuring her too much. My lord sent me here to sincerely guide the way for the general. The second in command did not make a sound this time. He stared at Wei Si with his big, round eyes. Speak. I want to hear what you have to say. He snorted coldly, gritted his teeth in humiliation, and said fiercely, I'll die if I surrender to the Red Lotus Church. Do you think I won't die if I surrender to Lu Shi? It sounds nice, but in reality, it's just like that. Wei Si smiled and said, General, if you pledge your allegiance to my lord and assist him in destroying the Red Lotus Group, you will be a meritorious minister in destroying the Red Lotus Group. Why poison a meritorious official? If I really did that from now on, who would be willing to abandon the dark for the light and seek refuge with my master? General, why don't you think about it carefully? Have you ever had any conflict with my master? Was there any old scores? Since there isn't, why are you still worried? That's right. There's no enmity between him and Lu Shi. If he had taken the initiative to pledge allegiance, why would Lu Shi want to harm him? Even if they did not use him, Lu Shi would not harm him. On the contrary, he would treat him kindly. Otherwise, once word of this got out, Lu Shi's enemies would only stubbornly resist. Surrendering meant death. Not surrendering meant death. So, it was better to fight to the end and not surrender. The balance in his heart slowly tilted towards Jiang Pengji. Wei Xiai knew that the time was ripe, so he did not rush him. Instead, he looked relaxed and indifferent, calm and elegant. Can you guarantee that Lu Shi won't turn his back on us? My lord has set her sights on the world. A mere Qiuyu County is not worth her breaking her promise. The second-in-command's face turned green and black. He understood that he was being looked down upon, but what made him feel helpless was that others had the right to look down on him. Thus, he struggled even more intensely in his heart. At this moment, Wei Xiai got up from his seat and flicked his sleeves. His voice was as clear as a clear spring in the mountains, as if one's whole body was immersed in an icy spring on a hot summer day. It made one shiver uncontrollably. "General, time is running out," he said with a smile. "My lord has been ordered to rescue the king. If the attack fails for a long time, he will definitely withdraw his troops to defend the 3 counties. Without the pressure from my lord, do you think the Red Lotus Group will let this go and not pursue your crimes of kidnapping the leader and defying the judgment of the sect?" Even without Wei Xi's reminder, the second-in-command knew what would happen to him just by thinking about that scenario. Wei Xiai added fuel to the fire. "General, you have a strong military force, but most of them are followers of the Red Lotus Group. According to my speculation, except for a few trusted subordinates, no one else should know that you harmed the leader, right? If my lord withdraws his troops, the Red Lotus Group will find a way to prove your crimes. General, do you think that those followers who worship the leader won't turn against you? Not only would they turn against him, but they might even have their heads chopped off if they slacked off for a nap." The second-in-command knew that his position was unstable, but after listening to Wei Xi's words, he realized that the situation was far more serious than he had imagined. Now he was afraid, and he restrained his arrogance. Once he understood, he was more adaptable than anyone else. He bowed in a nondescript manner and asked for guidance. "Please guide me, sir." Wei Xiai sat back in his seat, a faint smile on his lips. "I dare not say that I can guide you, but I do have a few good words to tell you, General." Wei Xiai had arrived at the right time. The envoy sent by the Red Lotus Group for peace talks had arrived during the day. He tried every possible way to persuade the second-in-command, and he made a bunch of promises. The second-in-command was uneasy and did not immediately agree. He only said that he needed to think about it. Not long after nightfall, Wei Xiai arrived. His sincere talk was far more reassuring to the second-in-command than a bunch of promises. In the face of a desperate situation, he would naturally choose the most beneficial path for himself. Relying on Lu, she might not be a bad idea. Wei Xi's words gave the second-in-command a glimmer of hope. He secretly gritted his teeth and said to Wei Xiai, "During the day, the Red Lotus Group sent an envoy to persuade me to join forces with them. In order to show my sincerity, I'll get someone to kill those bastards. I only hope that you can put in a few good words for me." Wei Xiai stopped the second-in-command and said, "You must not." The second-in-command was surprised. "Why not? We'll alert the enemy." Wei Xiai did not even bat an eyelid as he continued. "If the envoy they send is killed by you, they will surely know that you have defected to my master. When that time comes, they will be on guard, and you'll be in danger. It's better to hold back for now, pretend to agree to cooperate, lure their elites into the city, and then lay an ambush, catching them like a turtle in a jar. At that time, they will be leaderless, and the Red Lotus Group outside the city will have no one to command them. My master will then send troops to capture them. In this way, we can definitely eliminate this hidden danger easily." Wei Xiai said it casually, as if it was a very common idea. But when the second-in-command heard it, he faintly felt the urge to sweat. In his opinion, the scholar in front of him was extremely handsome and did not pose a threat at all. If not for this, he would not have had the courage to stay in the same room with someone for so long, because he felt that Wei Xiai was very weak. Now that he saw it, he felt that scholars were really scary. Their words were like swords, and their brushes were like knives. They were casual, and could kill people without leaving a trace. Wei Si asked him, "What does the general think?" The second-in-command stuttered slightly and said, "Very, very good." Wei Si continued, "In order to win people's trust, I hope that the general can do one more thing." The second-in-command asked him, "What is it?" "Kill me." The second-in-command was stunned. He felt that there was something wrong with his ears. Otherwise, how could he have heard such a strange request? Kill you? Chapter 656. Strategists were heartless. Not only were they ruthless to their enemies, but they were even more ruthless to their own people and themselves. The second-in-command could not describe that feeling, but after listening to Wei Si's explanation, there was only one thought in his mind: to tremble. In order to harm the enemy, he was willing to seek death. How ruthless was this? Wei Si explained his plan in detail, and after a while he asked for the second-in-command's opinion. "What does the general think of this plan?" The second-in-command came back to his senses and stammered, "Very, very good, whatever you say, sir. In that case, let's have a pleasant cooperation." Wei Si's smile was so beautiful that people could not help but sigh. This man was deep and tall, and could be called an elegant gentleman. Only the second-in-command, who was being stared at by him, could not feel happy. Instead, he had the urge to shiver, and his hair stood on end. Scholars were all scary. First, and Shui, who played everyone in circles. Then, there was Wei Si, who could turn the tables in the enemy's camp. If he could, the second-in-command would never want to provoke such a black-hearted scholar in his life. Not long after the second-in-command entered the main hall, there was a clattering sound, followed by the sound of swords being unsheathed and a short and abrupt scream. The guards outside thought that someone had attacked the second-in-command and hurried in. They were all shocked by the scene in front of them. They saw a young man in a dark green Confucian robe lying on the ground, hugging his stomach and curling up. His face could not be seen, and a pool of thick black blood spread from his body. The guards immediately understood who was killed, and their faces turned pale with fright. Envoys should not be killed in a battle between two armies. Now that Lu Shi's envoy had been killed in a rage by the second-in-command, the two sides would not rest until one side was dead. If they were defeated on the battlefield, perhaps Lu Shi would cruelly massacre the city and kill all the captives to vent his anger. "Bastard Lu, do you think I'm afraid of him?" The second-in-command snorted and said in a rough voice, "Even if he came in person, I would kill him with one blow, not to mention the envoy sent by Lu Shi. Drag this man away, chop him up, and feed him to the dogs. Remember to clean up the bones and send them to Lu Shi." Peace talks? Damn it. If one comes, we'll kill one. If two come, we'll kill both. Do you think the Red Lotus group has no one? The deputy chief was so angry that no one dared to stop him. They could only obey the order and drag the corpse of the green-robed young man away. The strong smell of blood permeated the room, and the lights flickered, giving rise to a sense of fear. The second-in-command paced back and forth anxiously. His expression was gloomy. It was obvious that he was not as tough and imposing as he appeared to be after killing Wei Si. "Second leader, since we've killed the envoy of that Lu thief, I'm afraid that Lu thief will receive the news that very night. If he challenges us tomorrow, let's fight then. Do you think I'm afraid of a brat who hasn't even grown hair yet?" The second-in-command's temper exploded. After a while, he paced back and forth with a dispirited expression, as if he was going to break through the solid wood floor. After a while, the second-in-command took a deep breath and ordered his subordinates to invite the emissaries sent by the Red Lotus group. After everyone retreated, the second-in-command hurriedly walked to the back hall. Wei Si's clothes had already been changed. His linen clothes were brown, and the jade crown on his head had been replaced with a cloth scarf. Other than his outstanding looks and temperament, he seemed to be no different from an ordinary scholar. Sir, I've already done as you instructed. Will they take the bait?" Wei Si held a teacup and sipped at it. The taste of the tea was not very good, but he was not a picky person. "Make it quick," Wei Si said. "It's best to lure their elites into the city tomorrow. If time passes, they will become suspicious." The second-in-command nodded obediently and said, Shall I send someone to escort you out of the city? Wei Si waved his hand and refused. I'm a dead man and should not be exposed in front of others. Even the general's confidants may not be completely trusted. The best way to keep a secret is to have as few people who know about it as possible. I will temporarily disturb the general for a day or two. The second-in-command did not refuse. He was happy that Wei Si was in his hands. At least he had a guarantee. If Lu Shi went back on his word, he would have nothing to fear with Wei Si in his hands. However, the second-in-command thought about it and thought of another more dangerous problem. Sir, I followed your instructions and returned your human bones to District Magistrate Lu. Will you really not bear a grudge against me? It would be fine if he passed a message, but if he did not, Lu Shi would chop him up without a second thought. Then he would die an unjust death. Wei Si smiled and said, Of course not. General, you should rest assured. In fact, Wei Si's plan was an impromptu one. Before meeting the second-in-command, he had thought of many plans, but after seeing him in person, he overturned the previous plan and came up with a new one that was beneficial and harmless. Of course, this was also the most ruthless one. The second-in-command left confidently. Wei Si slowly lowered his eyes. He put down the teacup in his hand, his eyes cold and fierce. Wei Si already had the idea of uprooting the Red Lotus Group. Why would he recruit people from the Red Lotus Group into his own forces? He did not inform Jiang Pengji of this impromptu plan. In other words, the Lord was unaware of Wei Si's death. Under such circumstances, if the second-in-command died, no one could say anything bad about her. At most, they could say that Wei Si was black-hearted, ruthless, sinister, and treacherous. However, he did not care about his reputation for a long time, or rather, he had trained to be thick-skinned. Others could comment however they wanted, as long as they did not implicate the Lord. Yes, Wei Si had no intention of letting the second-in-command of the Red Lotus Group live. Not long after the second-in-command killed Wei Si, in anger, the messenger of the Red Lotus Group received the news. After learning that Wei Si had been killed, chopped into pieces of meat and fed to dogs, and that his incomplete human bones had been sent to Lu Shi overnight, the messenger was so happy that his teeth could not be seen. The second-in-command took the opportunity to express his worries. He had killed Lu Shi's trusted advisor. Wouldn't Lu Shi explode on the spot? The messenger of the Red Lotus Group also took advantage of the situation, hoping that the two sides could shake hands and make peace, and use the danger of the city walls to resist Lu Shi. When the second-in-command heard this, he agreed readily. To be honest, in terms of acting, the second-in-command was quite clumsy. However, he had a full beard, and his expression was not easy to observe. In addition, the news that the Red Lotus Group had received was too clear. Wei Si had indeed been stabbed to death by the second-in-command. His face and body were badly mutilated, so they naturally did not suspect anything. The second-in-command had killed Wei Si, which meant that he could no longer be recruited by Lu Shi. In the second half of the night, Jiang Pengji's tent was brightly lit. She frowned slightly, as if she had an ominous premonition. After waiting for a long time, she was about to rest for a while with her hand on her cheek when the sound of hurried footsteps came from outside the tent. What's going on outside? Yang Si lifted the curtain and walked in. His waist was wrapped in white linen, and his eyes were bloodshot. He was followed by two attendants. Jiang Pengji keenly smelled the scent of blood. Her heart skipped a beat, and she asked, What's wrong? Zixiao, he was killed. Chapter 657. Because she couldn't sleep all night, Jiang Pengji kept the live stream on. She watched a group of night owls and idle people send bullet screens to kill time. When Yang Si said that, the night owls who were still dozing off in front of the screen instantly woke up. Fat Cat Chili. Wait, what the F***CK? Am I hearing things? What happened to Beauty Ci? Yiwu Yinling. Oh my god, don't scare me. How could something happen to Beauty Ci? How could it be? Today is not April Fool's Day. Nuan Xiang. Although I always feel that Beauty Ci is delicate and weak, he doesn't have the appearance of short life. How could something happen to him? Cat Demon June. Today is April Fool's Day. I'm not listening. I'm not listening. This is definitely a joke designed by the streamer. Yin Ruochin, Wei Ci is dead? As his veteran fan, I absolutely can't accept this result. The livestream room was in an uproar. Although the livestream room only had an upper limit of 150,000 viewers after several years, the number of livestream fans accumulated was more than 10 million. Wei Ci's Tieba alone had more than 30 million followers. These 30 million fans were live fans, not zombie fans. The Tieba was abnormally active. Although these Oni groups were all here for their looks, the world was a place where looks mattered the most. Now that everyone received the news of Wei Ci's death, they suddenly felt as if two bombs had exploded in their ears. The words Wei Ci's death became a hot topic in minutes. Madame Adam's fan club couldn't wait to rush into the livestream room. Jiang Pengji was also shocked, but her mental fortitude was excellent. No matter how thunderous her heart was, she remained calm on the surface. Tell me in detail what happened. Jiang Pengji's tone was unprecedentedly cold. Every word contained murderous intent. Even though there was a charcoal brazier burning in the tent, one could still feel the obvious drop in temperature. Zixiao is dead? Could it be the group from Chiyu County? Yang Si held back the grief in his heart. He gritted his teeth and endured the surging sourness in his throat. He spoke with difficulty. Hearing that Wei Ci's body had been chopped up and thrown to the wolves as food, and that his bones had been gnawed clean and sent back, Jiang Pengji's state of mind was already unstable. She was as cold as ice, and her murderous intent rose steadily. The livestream room even lost its order. She was not in the mood to care about the explosive bullet screen, and turned her eyes to the two attendants behind Yang Si. Each of them was holding a corner of a piece of white cloth, and the white cloth was wrapped around a heavy object. That was where the smell of blood came from. Yang Si said, "The thieves in Chiyu County threw this on horseback in front of the camp." Jiang Pengji stood up coldly. The two attendants put down the white cloth, revealing a pile of human bones. It was stained with dark blood, and the flesh that wasn't completely eaten was still stuck to the bones. Many places had bite marks of dogs. Jiang Pengji only glanced at him once, and her murderous gaze softened a little. She raised her hand and ordered her attendants to leave. Although Yang Si was immersed in hatred, he also noticed the changes in Jiang Pengji. His gaze then fell on the pile of fresh human bones, and his lips moved for a while. "My lord, Zixiao," Jiang Pengji scoffed and snorted. "He's not dead." Yang Si, put away that mournful expression. "This isn't Zixiao's human bones." Jiang Pengji squatted down and took out a piece of bone with blood and mincemeat. The audience in the streaming room expressed that they could not stand such a large-scale taboo scene, and they all commented on the bullet screen to protect themselves. "The bone age isn't right." "Bone age?" Jiang Pengji said with experience. "The bone age of this set of bones is at least 35 years old. Zixiao is only in his early 20s. Also, although Zixiao has learned martial arts, he's at most at the level of square dancing. The bone age of this set of human bones is obviously that of someone who has been doing strenuous work for a long time. Moreover, Zixiao is on the skinny side, but this set of bones is different. It's at least a size stronger than Zixiao, so he's not Zixiao." "Yang Si, not Zixiao. Then where is Zixiao?" Jiang Pengji secretly heaved a sigh of relief, but she appeared calm on the surface. She smiled and said, "I'm afraid he's hiding somewhere, sitting back and watching the show begin." Yang Si's expression twitched. He looked at the pile of human bones on the ground with hidden bitterness, and he secretly gritted his teeth. "This weighs Zixiao. What tricks does he want to play this time?" Jiang Pengji rubbed her chin and smiled faintly. "In short, it's definitely beneficial to us." After Yang Si calmed down, he regained his wits. He frowned deeply and carefully tried to figure out Wei Ci's train of thought. If Wei Ci was killed by the second-in-command out of anger, who would benefit the most? The Red Lotus Group, because this move cut off the second-in-command's escape route of relying on Lu Shi. In order to protect himself, he could only continue to ally with his old boss, the Red Lotus Group. His old boss was also happy to accept the second-in-command and his troops. Coupled with the convenience of the city gates of Chiuyu County, they could delay Jiang Pengji to death. Not long after, Yang Si understood Wei Si's plan. He was angry and furious. This guy, can't he tell me in advance what his plan is? He almost scared me out of my wits. Jiang Pengji said, plans can't keep up with changes. Maybe he came up with this idea on the spur of the moment. Yang Si asked, since Zixiao is fine, then my lord, what should we do tomorrow? Should we directly challenge him to a fight? Jiang Pengji nodded. Yes, our trusted advisor has been killed. We should at least put on a show. I don't want to act. Tomorrow, you'll go to the front lines. Yang Si was speechless. He didn't want to act either. Wei Si wasn't dead yet. Why should he waste his feelings? Jiang Pengji continued. Zixiao may have already instigated the one in Chiuyu County to defect. Now that the Red Lotus Group is united on the surface, I'm afraid that both sides will suffer losses and fight to the death. We'll challenge them first. On the surface, we'll exert pressure, but in reality, we'll bide our time and observe the specific situation. Based on Jiang Pengji's understanding of Wei Si, this person had probably already made a comprehensive plan. If the Red Lotus Group didn't lose everything this time, Jiang Pengji's name would be read backwards. When Jiang Pengji received Wei Si's corpse, the Red Lotus Group outside the city also received the news. The scholar from the Red Lotus Group was not suspicious. Instead, he was secretly pleased. Although Wei Si's reputation on the battlefield was not prominent, he was in charge of the post-war pension and the stationing of the troops. He had a high reputation among the people of Fengyi County. As Lu Shi's right-hand man, he had been hacked to death and fed to the dogs. His corpse had even been sent to Lu Shi. He would wake up laughing even in his dreams. Lu Shi had made him suffer a lot. Now that Wei Si was dead, he could be considered to have regained some of his dignity. The scholar was certain that it was impossible for the deputy chief to side with Lu Shi. Naturally, he did not suspect that there was a trick. The two sides agreed to meet the next day to resist Lu Shi together. Before dawn, Jiang Pengji had already sent someone to the foot of the city to challenge them. The generals and soldiers were ready for battle. Their murderous aura shook the sky, and the war drums thundered. Even though they were far away, the people on the city walls could feel the repressed and resentful murderous intent. For a moment, everyone was in a state of panic. The deputy chief's face was a mixture of green and white. Panic and fear surfaced on the surface. The more it was like this, the more relieved the scholar from the Red Lotus Group was. Chapter 658. When the second-in-command invited the higher-ups of the Red Lotus Group into the city to discuss the grand plan, the Red Lotus Group agreed without even thinking about it. However, they were a little more cautious. They brought 2,000 troops into the city, while the other 30,000 troops remained outside the city. If anything went wrong, these 30,000 troops would rush into the city at the first instance. The second-in-command and a military advisor of the Red Lotus Group did not get along very well. Both were fed up with each other, but the current situation was unique, and they had no choice but to work together. The scholar had already secretly made up his mind. After they beat back Lu Shi, he would be the first to capture the second-in-command and interrogate him. Now, for the sake of the bigger picture, he could only endure for the time being. He would let this boorish fellow run wild for a few more days. The scholar was secretly calculating. How could he know that the second-in-command was also plotting against him? Although the scholar and the others had brought 2,000 men with them, these 2,000 men were no match for the 30,000 troops in the city. On the surface, the two of them feigned civility, but in reality, they each had their own plans. No matter how the military drums sounded outside, the second-in-command still guarded the city and refused to come out. The soldiers guarding the city even cursed him loudly outside. Inside the city, the second-in-command held a banquet. The dancers and singers sang and danced to liven things up. At the same time, a group of prostitutes and prostitutes served them from the side. The drumming outside the city was like thunder. Even from such a distance, one could still hear it if they listened carefully. After 3 rounds of wine, They began to talk about the main topic. R, the second-in-command, had a bitter expression on his face. He secretly rubbed his hands and grabbed the scholar beside him to complain. RHE didn't dare to say that he had kidnapped the hierarch in front of everyone, so he could only change the topic and make things difficult for himself. On account of the fact that they were from the same bloodline and were like brothers, he had to help him defeat Lu Shi outside the city. The scholar's smile was very stiff. He wanted to withdraw his hand, but the second-in-command held it tightly and could not do so. Or don't be anxious. Thief Lu only has 10,000 troops. How can he be a match for us? The scholar forced a smile and comforted him. Actually, as long as our two clans put aside our former enmity and work together to occupy the city walls, the traitor Lu will retreat on his own in less than half a month. R, the second-in-command, said. But right now, they're challenging us to a fight. If we don't fight, wouldn't we lose face? R, the scholar said. How much is face worth? As long as we could defeat Lu Shi, our sect will be renowned throughout the world. After that, the scholar analyzed Lu Shi's current awkward situation in detail, as if he was giving pointers to the country, and his words were reasonable and well-grounded. Everyone in the hall complimented and flattered the scholar, making him feel as if he was on cloud nine. He had completely forgotten about his previous failure. Outside the city, no matter how many people Jiang Pingji sent to challenge them to a fight, the people inside the city held their ground and refused to come out. They were determined to be mute. Seeing that the sky was getting darker and darker, Jiang Pengji's eyes turned frosty. Yangxi hurried over. His footsteps were hurried, and his breathing was heavy. He shouted, my lord, I've found out the exact news. Not long ago, there was an unusual movement in the Red Lotus Group's camp. About 2,000 people entered Qiuyu County. It looks like they're ready to join forces. Jiang Pengji's eyes flickered slightly, and there was a slight smile on her lips. 2,000 people? Are there any important people among them? She crossed her arms over her chest and looked up at the sky. She pondered and calculated in her heart. Yangxi was already prepared. He opened his mouth and said, according to the scout's report, the leader is probably an elite high-level member of the Red Lotus Group. But it's too far away, so the details are not clear. But judging from the clothes they're wearing, there may be 23 high-level members. The Red Lotus Group was not a regular army. Most of the members were poor people. They wore whatever they had. Many of their clothes were taken from the dead and wrapped around their bodies casually. As long as they could keep warm and not freeze to death, it was fine. Who cared if they were clean or beautiful? Therefore, in the Red Lotus Group, those who wore armor or bright clothes were basically people of status and prestige. The scouts couldn't get too close, but judging by their clothes, their identities were about 80% or 90%. Jiang Pengji narrowed her eyes, and there was a hint of danger in her gaze. She murmured, 23. Yangxi continued. Although it's not clear how many high-level elites the Red Lotus Group has, just looking at this number, they've taken away more than half. Jiang Pengji sneered softly. In other words, the current Red Lotus camp is basically in a state of no leader? Jingrong, what do you think are our chances of winning if we sneak attack their camp in the middle of the night? I think we can still fight them, even if they have 30,000 troops. She had fewer troops on her side, but the overall conditions were much better. They had enough clothes to keep them warm, enough rations, and the military equipment was of high quality. The soldiers were also well-trained. Their numbers were only 1/3 of the enemy's, but in the middle of the cold winter night, the advantage of numbers would be greatly reduced. They had launched a sneak attack in the middle of the night and caught the enemy off guard. Coupled with the crushing quality of the overall team, the Red Lotus Group was still in a state of no leader. She felt that they had a good chance of winning. Yangxi laughed and said, in my opinion, maybe this is what Zixiao, the fox, is planning. Jiang Pengji crossed her arms in front of her chest and snorted. Zixiao has already instigated the forces in Qiuyu County to rebel. The Red Lotus Group has brought 2,000 troops into the city. Haha, there's going to be a good show tonight. The camp outside the city had been sneak attacked by Jiang Pengji, and the city was besieged on all sides and ambushed on all sides. The Red Lotus group had not died in vain. After making the decision, Jiang Pengji ordered the soldiers to continue challenging the enemy for a quarter of an hour, then sounded the gong to withdraw. Because the people in the city refused to fight for a long time, Jiang Pengji's side had been challenging the enemy for the whole afternoon, so much so that their morale was a little low. She asked the logistics department to prepare an adequate dinner for the soldiers, then let them rest in advance to recuperate and raise their morale again. That night, the bright white moon was covered by dark blue clouds. There was not much light on the ground. Jiang Pengji led the whole army out of the camp. In order not to arouse the vigilance of the people in the city, the torches in the camp were still burning. The Red Lotus group's camp was a full 2 hours' walk from their camp. Now that it was nighttime, the road was difficult to walk, so their pace was even slower. The soldiers guarding on the city wall still did not notice anything unusual. First of all, the torches in the camp were still burning. Second of all, when Jiang Pengji led the troops away, she went out from the back of the camp. The vision of the guards on the city wall was not that good, so they did not see it. At the same time, the city was brightly lit, and the sounds of singing and swallows could be heard. Among the shadows, one could see the graceful figures of women dancing. Everyone had reached an agreement. They were in a good mood and drank to their heart's content. Toasts were exchanged, and wine cups clinked against each other. Rough and thunderous voices floated far out of the main hall. The second-in-command was drunk. His cheeks were pink, and his nose was red. He rubbed his stomach, and the urge to pee rushed to his head. He got up and pushed away the dancer who was attached to him. He said in a loud voice, "You guys eat and drink first. I'm going to relieve myself." Everyone did not suspect anything. Who among them had not gotten up 3 or 4 times to relieve themselves in the toilet? They drank too much, so they were holding in their pee. It was very uncomfortable. Chapter 659. He went to the toilet and secretly ordered his trusted subordinates to deploy troops. He asked them to quietly surround the main hall and avoid the 2,000 spies brought by the Red Lotus group. Finally, he pretended that nothing had happened and returned to the main hall to continue drinking and having fun with the others. The people in the hall were still drinking. No one realized that countless arrows had been aimed at them and that there was a murderous intent everywhere. The second-in-command was still urging them to drink. The scholar of the Red Lotus group had already drunk so much that he was sprawled on the table, his clothes disheveled. At the same time, a few dark shadows flipped into a remote house in the city. Sir, Wei Ci came out of the room with an indifferent expression. "I'm here. We came late." Sir must have been startled. These men dressed in black and brown were the guards who had followed Wei Ci into the city. After entering the city, Wei Ci let them do as they pleased. They hid in Chuyu County and did not need to worry about his safety. They would find an opportunity to meet up in the future. What's the situation outside? One of them said they spread the news that Sir was killed and threw a skeleton that had been gnawed on by a wolf dog in front of our camp. Our Lord sent people outside to challenge us all afternoon, but the Red Lotus group stayed in the city and did not come out. At noon, 2,000 troops and horses entered the city and were well received. Wei Ci folded his hands in his sleeves and looked at the moon in the sky. He asked, "Do you know where those 2,000 people are temporarily staying?" One of them said, "The situation in the city is tense. We have investigated many times and have found out the specific location." Wei Ci smiled. The corners of his lips curled up slightly, revealing a faint smile. "You have done well. Now listen to my orders. Go and tell those people that the second-in-command of the Red Lotus group is up to no good." He lured them into the city to surround and kill them. Tell them to quickly go and rescue them. The guards were puzzled, but they still nodded in agreement. Wei Ci added, "The terrain here is remote. I will be fine hiding here. Just do your own things." It was not safe for Wei Ci to hide with the second-in-command, so the second-in-command transferred him here. This place was secluded and quiet with few people around. It was indeed a good place to hide and conceal his identity. The guards acknowledged the order and dispersed one after another. We're in the middle of the night. The night was dark and windy, a murderous night. Jiang Pengji led all the troops. Their equipment was light, and they rushed all the way to the Red Lotus Group's camp. The Red Lotus Group's campsite was very shabby. There were very few torches, and the campsite was in a mess. There weren't even a few patrolling guards. We're in this lousy weather. The temperature in the middle of the night was very touching. Most people couldn't stand the cold and found a place to squat. The discipline within the Red Lotus Group was lax, and the patrolling soldiers were lazy as much as they could. During the day, most of their superiors had left, so they were more casual. When Jiang Pengji arrived with her troops, there was not even a guard by the camp's fence. Yangxi was so cold that he was shivering. He said shakily, "Could it be a trap?" Jiang Pengji snorted and said contemptuously, "If the Red Lotus Group had brains, they wouldn't have been fooled by Zi Xiao and Shui." Yangxi shut up. Ri's IQ wasn't low, but he would occasionally be tricked by the black-hearted Wei Ci. Okay. As for Shui, who was a three-faced spy, he didn't want to comment further. Jiang Pengji's mental brain was developed. She was sure that there were people in the camp, and it wasn't an ambush. Order the archers to prepare the fire arrows. Everyone held their breath. Hundreds of archers took out the oiled arrows and lit them. Then they knocked the arrows and drew their bows, shooting them into the air. At the command, the sky was filled with arrows, leaving orange trails in the air. Then they fell into the camp like rain. The soldiers in the camp were still in dreamland. The people on night watch outside yawned continuously. They hugged their weapons and leaned against the fence to sleep. When the second wave of fire arrows fell, the tents were already burning. Only then did someone notice the commotion. They shouted at the top of their lungs, "Enemy attack! Enemy attack!" They were too sleepy. Even though they shouted like that, not many people were woken up. They were in a flurry. When someone blew the horn to signal the enemy, the fire burned from one tent to another with the help of the night wind. Enemy attack! Wake up! Messy shouts and messy footsteps. The crackling sounds intertwined into a soul-stealing song. As the sound of hooves approached, the horses neighed and landed. The gate of the camp was violently broken open. The soldiers on both sides were about to step forward to resist when they saw a flash of silver light. Two clusters of blood bloomed enchantingly. One would have thought that Lu Shi's army, which had been shouting all afternoon, would launch a surprise attack on the Red Lotus Group's camp outside the city in the middle of the night. Dian Yan's speed was not as fast as Jiang Pengji's. The horse he was riding on lowered its head and strode at a steady pace. Although the horse's speed was not fast, its breathing was very steady. It followed closely behind Jiang Pengji and rushed into the camp. On horseback, Dian Yan killed anyone he saw. The two axes in his hands were deadly. He was born with great strength. When the axes fell, he could split a person in half from the middle. Their crooked intestines spilled all over the ground. The battle cries were like a huge stone thrown into a calm lake. With a bang, huge ripples spread out. The fire burned bigger and bigger. It almost dyed the entire camp a bewitching orange-red color. Kill. Because it was in the middle of the night, most of the Red Lotus Group soldiers were asleep. They were awakened by the noise and fire outside. Out of survival instinct, they rushed out of their tents. Their hands were empty. They had no weapons at all. Outside, there were strong enemies eyeing them covetously. Even though they had 30,000 people, they were still defeated by Jiang Pengji's troops. They only cared about escaping and did not resist. Inside the city, according to Wei Ci's request, the guard disguised himself as a member of the Red Lotus Group and hurriedly spread the news. At first, they did not believe it, but when they saw the fires spreading outside the city and vaguely heard the battle cries and cries, their expressions changed. Having achieved his goal, the guard slipped away amid the chaos and sat back to watch the show unfold. At that moment, someone in the hall got up in a daze and wanted to relieve himself. As soon as he pushed the door open, he saw that there was something unusual in the dark night. The orange-red light of the fire dyed half the sky red. It was like a burning cloud. What's that? Chi was in a daze. As soon as he took a step forward, his mind quivered and he suddenly remembered. Wasn't that the place where they had set up camp? Chi sobered up from his drunkenness. Cold sweat broke out on his back. That was not all. With the help of the candlelight outside, he vaguely saw some strange figures in the distance. Ra's sense of crisis rose from the soles of his feet to his head. It made his scalp tingle and his whole body tremble. Chi retracted his foot, not knowing how to react for a moment. What should I do? What should I do? What should he do? Chi was so anxious that he was out of his wits. He hurriedly walked back and tried to wake someone up. Halfway through his shout, he noticed a pair of malicious eyes staring at him from above, like a soul-reaping messenger. The second in charge snorted contemptuously, got up, and strode away. As soon as he stepped out, the door was immediately pulled shut. Killed him. The second in charge voice was muffled. After a while, countless arrows pierced through the paper window and shot indiscriminately into the room. The arrowheads were still on fire. The arrows pierced into the wine, and the fire spread instantly. Help, help! The fire swept through the room, and the screams in the room gradually became weaker and shorter. The second in charge sneered, put his hands behind his back, and strode away. However, he had not gone far when he heard hurried footsteps coming from outside, accompanied by shouts of killing. They were getting closer and closer. Ree's face paled. Dozens of people rushed through the heavy vermilion door. It was actually the 2,000 men brought by the Red Lotus group. Chapter 660. Sure enough, it's messed up. This way Zixiao has a very strong heart. Yangzi panted heavily as he gripped the reins with all his might to prevent himself from falling off the horse's back. He looked rather pathetic. After being tossed and turned, the originally neat scholar's robe became wrinkled. Every time he took a deep breath, the cold wind would pour into his mouth. Yangzi turned his head to look at Qiuyu County. He saw that the night sky above the county had also been dyed orange-red, giving off a dangerous and enchanting light. This is called telepathy. Jiang Pengji stood on the horse with a faint smile on her face. Yangzi spat and said angrily, "What telepathy? I think he's just looking for trouble. Who knows who that pile of human bones belongs to? If we believe that Zixiao has been killed, I'm afraid we'll miss the battle. He's good, at least let us know." Speaking of this, Yangzi was also very depressed. Looking at the pile of human bones, Yangzi also thought that it was Wei Si's corpse. He was really sad for a while. If it wasn't for his lord who quickly identified it, he might still be in the dark. Hearing that, Jiang Pengji's slightly pale lips curled into a beautiful arc. Maybe this is also within his expectations. He knows that I won't be deceived by the corpses, let alone miss the battle. After she finished speaking, Jiang Pengji waved the long spear in her hand. The originally silver-white long spear had been soaked in fresh blood. The whole spear was scarlet. The warm, fresh blood quickly cooled under the cold wind and solidified into blood clots. It was a little sticky and disgusting to the touch. Archie put down the long spear as if nothing had happened and looked in the direction of the county. Jing Rome, gather the troops and attack Qiuyu County. I'll kill you while you're down. Yangzi said, "As you wish." Today, Qiuyu County was already in a mess. Flames were spreading under the push of the wind. Shadows of people were moving about, and battle cries were shaking the sky. The guards on the city walls were also implicated. At this moment, a few black shadows approached the city gates and opened the bolts. They pushed together and heard a creaking sound. The tall city gate opened, reducing the trouble for Jiang Pengji and the others. Your subordinates welcome the Lord. The group of people who opened the door were the guards who accompanied Wei Si into the city. According to Wei Si's orders, they instigated the Red Lotus Group's alliance to break up. Taking advantage of the chaos, they secretly opened the city for Jiang Pengji's army. Or where is Zixiao? One of them said, Sir has been moved to a safe place and is waiting for the Lord. Are the corners of Jiang Pengji's lips curled up slightly? Her eyes reflected the dancing orange-red sparks. When the sparks reached her ears, she felt an inexplicable urge to heat up her ears. Are quoting the words of the viewers in the live stream room. The streamer's smile was a little weak. Are, well done, generals and soldiers, follow me to kill the enemy. Are holding a spear and slapping the horse. They rode ahead. Are they fought fiercely all night until dawn. The faint light broke through the night sky, and the earth welcomed a brand new day. Are the fire burned all night, and now only a few flames were still stubbornly holding on. After the flames licked the ground was scorched black. Gray-white smoke was still rising from the broken walls and ruins. As far as the eye could see, it was a scene of desolation. Jiang Pengji patted the black smoke on Little White's body and muttered, Little White is about to be blackened by the smoke. As she spoke, she handed the reins in her hand to a soldier beside her and asked him to take Little White away to wipe it down. Yangxi had not slept all night. His eyes had already turned blue, and his eye bags were quite heavy. His fair cheeks were stained by the black smoke, and he looked dirty. Zixiao stayed here last night. This person really knows how to enjoy himself. He followed Jiang Pengji around, and he exercised a lot. He rode the horse frequently, and the skin on the inside of his thighs was rubbed with blisters several times. That was not all. His face, which had finally become a little fat, had now become thin again. Stubble covered his chin, and he looked a little down and out. What about Wei Ci? This fellow was really good. He knew how to enjoy himself. This place was remote and quiet. It was not affected by the tangled battle last night at all. At the thought of how he was in a sorry state last night, and how Wei Ci could still sleep soundly, Yangxi suddenly felt unbalanced. As he spoke, the tightly shut door opened, and a tall scholar in blue walked out. Wasn't Wei Ci? My lord. Jingrong. Wei Ci did not sleep all night. He paced near the door at dawn, and his feet seemed to be grinding a hole in the ground. In a trance, he heard a familiar voice. His whole body quivered, and he hurriedly opened the door. It was indeed Jiang Pengji and Yangxi. Wei Ci went forward to greet him. Yangxi put his hands in his wide sleeves, turned his head, and ignored him. It was Jiang Pengji who reacted. She stepped forward to greet him. Her eyes turned as she looked Wei Ci up and down. Jiang Pengji did not say anything, which made Wei Ci nervous for no reason. My lord? Are you all right? She asked. Wei Ci felt inexplicably guilty. He calmed his mind and maintained a calm expression. I'm fine. Thank you for your concern, my lord. It's good that you're all right. Jiang Pengji passed by him. Her lips moved, and she said in a voice that only the two of them could hear, I'll settle the score with you when we get back. Wei Ci's body stiffened, and his calm expression faintly cracked. Yangxi did not understand. When he passed by Wei Ci, he snorted softly. If all things to play. He faked his death and deceived people's feelings. Wei Ci smiled helplessly and bitterly. He believed that Jiang Pengji would guess his intentions and seize the opportunity to wipe out the Red Lotus Group in one fell swoop, take Xiaoyu County, and unify Wanzhou. Even if the two of them had not communicated beforehand, he believed that they had such a tacit understanding. It was just that it seemed that he had overreached himself. Yangxi was fine. It was not difficult to fool him. Wei Ci believed that he could deceive this person. But his lord could not. She was too shrewd. His experience in his previous life had already told him this. Just thinking about the scene of facing her directly made Wei Ci have a faint urge to break into a run. Even so, Wei Ci's disguise had almost been exposed, but Jiang Pengji had not completely exposed the thin veil. Wei Ci felt that he could still be saved. His disguise had not been exposed, and she would not dig out all his secrets. But after what happened last night, he felt guilty. If he had known this would happen, he would have sent someone to inform her in advance. Wei Ci felt as if he was sitting on pins and needles. Jiang Pengji, on the other hand, sat firmly in the seat of honor. After a simple meeting, the thing that Wei Ci was worried about did not happen. Seeing this, Wei Ci secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Yang Si and Wei Ci were responsible for the chores after the war. Soon, the two of them were occupied by the heavy work and had no time to think about other things. When counting the number of captives, Yang Si discovered something. Strange. We're the higher-ups of the Red Lotus group. Did you instigate the second-in-command to defect? They had captured more than 40,000 captives. It could be said to be a great harvest, but they were all members of the Red Lotus group. There were very few core members with a higher status. The desk in front of Wei Ci was full of documents. His right hand, which was holding the pen, was stiff and sore. He simply switched to his left hand and continued writing. He lowered his eyes, and his thick and slender eyelids cast a little shadow. Wei Ci said indifferently, "I reckon that he was either burned to death or hacked to death. Anyway, he's dead." Yang Si was shocked. "You fox, what did you do this time?" Wei Ci raised his lips and said, "It's a waste of rations to keep him alive. How can he share the burden and relieve the Lord of her burden? If we really recruit him, it will just be burying hidden dangers for our side. I'm afraid that he will bite back in the future. If that's the case, it's better to get rid of him as soon as possible and end all troubles once and for all." Yang Si was so shocked that he could not speak. Rast Jiang Pingji's messenger, Wei Ci recruited him and made use of him completely. After using him, he created a situation where the second-in-command was accidentally hacked to death. Chapter 661. When it came to scheming, Wei Ci was no match for Yang Si. After all, their styles were different. They both had hearts. The difference was that one was dirtier than the other. Yang Si was exasperated. All the crows in the world were black. Wei Ci, the damned fox, was laughing at others for being black. Where was his shame? Wei Ci and Yang Si were so busy with government affairs that their feet hardly touched the ground. Jiang Pengji had to think of a way to settle more than 40,000 captives. Otherwise, as time went on, it would be easy for variables to arise. According to the previous plan, some of them would be sent to Fengyi County to be laborers, while the rest would be left behind. Fengyi County and Shanyang County lacked manpower. Chengde County, which had just been conquered, also lacked manpower. After conquering Chengde County, the matter of rescuing the emperor had to be scheduled. From top to bottom, everyone was as busy as a spinning top. Jiang Pengji gave Wei Ci a separate task. It was not heavy, but it was not easy either. I promised in Shui that I would give him 10% of the wealth and manpower. Now it's time to fulfill my promise. The Red Lotus Group's wealth will take a few more days to count. As for the captives, Jiang Pengji counted the number of captives they had captured. There were about 80,000 of them. Most of them were ordinary people. Wei Ci wanted to select 8,000 troops for Shui. Do as you see fit. Wei Ci cupped his hands in acknowledgement. On the afternoon of the fourth day after conquering Qiuyu County, Shui and a few of his sworn brothers walked out of their hiding place in the mountains. Our big brother, District Magistrate Liu, captured a lot of captives. He wants to give at least 7,000 to 8,000 of us. Is he really willing to do that? The group of brothers muttered, their hearts beating like drums. Shui said calmly, "He has to be willing even if he can't bear to. If Liu Shi wasn't this generous, he wouldn't have gone far." As soon as the group approached Qiuyu County, they were discovered by the patrolling guards. They identified themselves, and Jiang Pengji personally received them. "Our brother Liu, how have you been?" Shui and the others had stayed in the mountains for a few days and hadn't had time to clean up. They looked a little down and out. If not for their extraordinary auras, they would have thought they were beggars. Compared to the young and promising Jiang Pengji, Shui's image was a little ugly. Shui's sworn brothers did not make a sound. Only Shui spoke. I'm a straightforward person, and I won't beat around the bush. I'm here today to make you fulfill your promise." Instead of feigning civility and probing each other, It would be better to go straight to the root of the problem and get straight to the point. Arjiang Pengji was not annoyed. Instead, she said, "Brotherin, you came at the right time. I was just about to send someone to look for you. Thanks to Brother An's help, I was able to take down Qingde County so quickly and capture more than 81,000 remnants of the Red Lotus Group. As for the confiscated money, the account books are also here. Brotherin, please check them. According to our original agreement, I definitely won't mistreat Brotherin for 10 men and money." Archie knew very well that Shui alone had contributed 30% to her taking down Qingde County so quickly. Even if Shui didn't come to her door to collect the debt, Jiang Pengji would send someone to receive him. Ran Shui held the thick stack of account books in his hands and was secretly speechless. This was probably the most extravagant account book he had ever seen. The account books were not pieced together from bamboo slips. Instead, they were sewn together from bamboo paper of the same size. Our bamboo paper was expensive and daunting. It would be even more expensive if it was resold in Nanxing. RHE flipped through a few pages. The records were extremely clear. Every account was clearly recorded. Arjiang Pengji's attitude was so unperturbed that it made Shui and his men seem a little petty. Realizing this, Shui did not flip through the entire contents in detail. He quickly returned the thick account books to Jiang Pengji. I'll listen to your arrangements. Brother Liu is an open and above-board person. Why wouldn't I trust you? Ran Shui wore an appropriate smile on his face. Without batting an eyelid, he warmed up the atmosphere again. As the two of them were talking, Wei Ci came in from outside the hall. The matter he reported happened to be related to Shui. The 8,100 people assigned to Shui had been selected. Ran Shui frowned slightly. His sworn brothers also reacted. They all felt their hearts skip a beat. They felt cheated. Rif Lu Shi would be chosen for them. Who knew if he would specifically choose the old, the disabled, or the seriously injured? What was the use of bringing such soldiers back? Arjiang Pengji acted as if she did not see the change in their expressions. She took the initiative to invite Shui. What a coincidence. Brotherin, why don't you accompany me to take a look? Ran Shui forced a smile. Then it would be impolite of me to decline. When they arrived at the drill ground, Shui realized that he had gauged the heart of a gentleman with his own mean measure. The captives Jiang Pengji had chosen for him were all well-formed and of suitable age. At a glance, they were all about the same size. Although the captives looked a little dispirited, that was because they had been defeated and captured. They felt lost and hopeless about their future. This outcome was far beyond Shui's expectations. As far as the eye could see, it was obvious that these captives had been carefully selected. They were all in the prime of their lives. Our brother Liu, Shui did not know how to react. It was too pleasant, too unexpected. Among the crowd, Shui even saw some of the middle and small backbone members of the Red Lotus Group. They were much stronger than ordinary people. If these people were trained well, they would definitely be able to create an army with decent combat power. Arjiang Pengji stopped him from speaking. As long as Brotherin is satisfied, there's no need to say anything else, lest we become estranged and hurt our brotherhood. Seeing this, Yangxi's expression became a little uneasy. After enduring for a long time, he finally had an opportunity. He secretly tugged at Wei Ci, almost gnashing his teeth. Wei Zixiao, are you siding with an outsider? Wei Ci was speechless. Why do you say that? When have I sided with an outsider? Yangxi said. Then what's the matter with the people you've chosen for Shui? Not to mention anything else, they were all young people, and some of them looked quite strong. So, it's because of this. Wei Ci said with a smile. My lord has also promised. You don't have to worry. Don't just look at how good these people look on the surface. That's not the case behind the scenes. Most of them are loyal believers or small leaders of the Red Lotus Group. They exploit the people, bully their neighbors, and commit many evil deeds. If we keep them, I'm afraid it will affect the internal atmosphere of the entire Wanzhou. It's better to abandon them. The most important thing was that they were too deeply poisoned by the teachings of the Red Lotus Group. They were basically malignant tumors, and they couldn't be left alive. Our Yangtze was astonished, so shocked that he couldn't speak. Our Weixiai narrowed his eyes, expressing his loyalty. I'd rather cut my own flesh and give up my life than harm my lord in this life. And Shui still has his uses. If we use old, weak, and crippled soldiers to fool him, I'm afraid he'll hold a grudge against my lord. However, if we use these 8,000 young and strong men as an explanation, he won't be able to tell that something is fishy in a short time. We can still make use of them a few more times. Jingrong, what are you looking at? Our Yangtze had finally regained his composure, but he became strange because of Wei Si's words. Ri's gaze fell behind Wei Si. Wei Si was puzzled at first, then he became flustered. R.H. turned his head and saw a very innocent-looking person leaning against the porch. Arjiang Pingji had an expression that said, "You guys continue chatting, I'm just looking at the scenery." Our Wei Si was speechless. How long had she been listening? Our Wei Si's eyes turned, and he used his gaze to ask Yang Si. R. Chapter 662. Wei Si received the hint from Yang Si. He carefully recalled what he had just said, and the color of blood gradually faded from his cheeks. It seemed that he had just said something that he shouldn't have. He tried to open his mouth to change the topic, but his lips moved for a while. He couldn't even say a word. It was as if a pair of invisible hands were pinching his throat, forcing him to swallow his next words. An indescribable feeling spread from his toes and rushed straight to his brain. Jiang Pengji crossed her arms in front of her chest and leaned against the pillar. Her gaze fell on Wei Si with a bit of fierce scrutiny. Yang Si keenly sensed the change in the atmosphere and swallowed nervously. He felt that the atmosphere between the two of them was a little strange. Logically speaking, Wei Si's expression of loyalty was accidentally heard by the Lord. As a Lord, shouldn't she be happy? Similarly, Wei Si's expression of loyalty was heard by the person involved. Even if he wasn't shy, he couldn't be afraid, right? In the end, Yang Si felt that he seemed to have smelled something unusual. Jiang Pengji retracted her gaze and said to Wei Si, I happened to pass by. You guys continue talking. With that, she simply turned around. At that moment, Wei Si realized that Jiang Pengji was wearing straw sandals instead of wooden clogs. No wonder she walked like she was floating and didn't make any sound. It wasn't until Jiang Pengji's figure disappeared from his field of vision that Wei Si slumped his shoulders in a deflated manner. His eyebrows were slightly furrowed. He said to Yang Si weakly, "Lend me a hand." Yang Si wanted Wei Si to fall, but he held back in the end. "What's wrong with you and the Lord?" Yang Si was conflicted for a while. His eyebrows knitted together. "I think you and the Lord are a little strange." To say it was strange was a euphemistic way of saying it. To put it bluntly, did the two of them have an affair in private? There was a cat scratching his heart, making it itch. Wei Si rubbed his eyebrows with a headache and glanced at him. "What's strange?" Yang Si pinched his chin and glanced at Wei Si from time to time. "Could it be that my previous guess was correct? Do you really have some unspeakable dirty thoughts about your Lord? Or does the Lord have the same kind of feelings for you?" Although men are popular nowadays, and people don't have much resistance to this kind of thing, you're 6 years apart and you're both monarchs and ministers. This matter is not easy to deal with. As he spoke, Yang Si rubbed his hands. Wei Si was already fuming with anger, yet Yang Si was still coming up with lousy ideas. Otherwise, Zi Xiao, you should find someone to marry. If he was worried about his fate, he could take a concubine. At least he would have a woman by his side. The balance of yin and yang was the right way to go. You could have taken the water route, but you chose to take the land route. Although you are older than the Lord, there is a difference in seniority. You can't just suppress the senior. This is disrespectful. If you really want to force it, won't you make me painful? Yang Si was halfway through his sentence when Wei Si rewarded him with an elbow strike that was neither light nor heavy. Yang Si was caught off guard, and his expression was twisted. Shameless sneak attack. Wei Si chuckled and raised his brows. Take a stroll in the martial arts arena? What water or land routes? This guy really didn't know how to restrain himself when he started talking dirty. He knew even more than that wastrel Fengzhen. Although Yang Si was still alone in his 20s, his private life was quite rich. Yang Si sucked in a breath of cold air and grimaced. Fine, I'll leave then. I tried to advise you out of goodwill, but not only do you not know how to be grateful, you even made a false accusation. He had to teach Wei Si a lesson today. When they arrived at the martial arts arena, Yang Si took out his sword, rolled up his sleeves, and pulled out his sword to face Wei Si. Wei Si returned the favor. Not long after, Jiang Pengji received news that the two strategists were fighting at the martial arts arena. Not only was Jiang Pengji dumbfounded, but the audience in the streaming room was also confused. Zhang Qinghua Yai, did I hear it wrong? Why did Yang Si and Wei Si fight? Aren't they literati? Mala flavor rabbit leg, hashtag pick nose. Who told you that literati can't fight? Do you think that the literati of this era are the same as the literati of China after the Song dynasty? They can't carry anything on their shoulders or lift anything with their hands. They have learned the 6 arts of a gentleman. Horse riding, archery, and swordsmanship are also compulsory courses. Sauce flavor chicken feet. I think you have some misunderstanding about literati. The literati of ancient times were basically proficient in both the pen and the sword. For example, my idol, Li Bai, was a genuine swordsmanship expert and the most respected in the martial arts world. Think about it. How chaotic the ancient society was. How could they not know how to fight when they could sneer and roam around outside? Otherwise, they would have been crushed to death long ago. Therefore, it's normal that Beauty CI and the others know how to fight. Country bumpkin. I'm shivering. The person above, please don't mention it. When Li Bai is mentioned, I think of the fear of being dominated by Li Bai's green lotus sword. When we were pioneering, there were always 3 parallel swords. One explosion destroyed one group. Li Bai, the god, fought 25 of them without panting. Sanzatsi Pingjian. No, you've all gone off topic, haven't you? Beauty Ci and Yang Si are fighting. Will they be all right? At this moment, the audience in the streaming room remembered the main point of the matter. They summoned Jiang Pengji to resolve the conflict between the two so that nothing bad would happen. Jiang Pengji had an indolent expression and rested her chin on her hand lazily. 2 rookies pecking at each other. What can happen? The 150,000 viewers were speechless. My lord, it hurts. Rookies. No. Wei Si and Yang Si had exchanged dozens of blows. Yang Si barely won by half a move. He liked to eat, but did not like to exercise. Naturally, his swordsmanship was rusty. Even though Wei Si went easy on him like a flood, he was still exhausted and sweating profusely. After a round of fighting, he was panting like a dog. On the other hand, Wei Si's face was not red and his heart was not beating. No, who was the sickly one? Zixiao, be honest. What's going on between you and the Lord? Wei Si put his sword back into its scabbard and said casually, What's going on between me and her? You're just being stubborn. Do you really think that my eyes are just for show? You're not the only smart person in this world. Everyone else's eyes are bright. Yang Si panted and suddenly recalled the conversation he had with Jiang Pengji that day. He said earnestly, It's best if there's nothing. The Lord is young and his temperament is not yet determined. If he gets involved with men out of curiosity, you'll be guilty. But I heard from the Lord that he seems to have a sweetheart. After Wei Si heard this, he froze on the spot. His feet seemed to be nailed to the ground, and he could not move an inch. A sweetheart? Yang Si nagged and repeated Jiang Pengji's words that day. He hoped that he could use reality to extinguish the possible hidden dangers. Whether it was from the Lord's or Wei Si's point of view, it would be very dangerous if the two of them developed a relationship other than that of a ruler and a minister. Firstly, Wei Si was 6 years older. People would only say that the Lord was young and ignorant. Wei Si fawned on her and shamelessly seduced a young man. He was degenerate. The two of them could have been a ruler and a minister for a lifetime and become a legend. Why did they have to bear eternal infamy? Secondly, the Lord already had a girl he liked. If Wei Si could not stop now, he would not even be able to be a ruler and a minister in the future. Out of concern for his friend, Yang Si felt that it was better to nip the bud in the bud, regardless of whether the two of them had any signs of it. But why did it not have any effect? At first, Wei Si's face was still a little green. As Yang Si spoke, it gradually turned into embarrassment and a faint blush hung on his face. Yang Si was speechless. Chapter 663. There was nothing wrong with it. Wei Si coughed lightly, and his expression returned to calmness. Only his ears were bloodshot, so red that tiny blood vessels could be seen. Of course, he could tell who the sweetheart Jiang Pengji was talking about was. Facing the ignorant Yang Si, he felt an inexplicable sense of shame. However, Yang Si's words just now were not without reason. The Lord was still young. She was in her teens and in her prime. What about Wei Zixiao? How could he be only 6 years older than her? I still have some matters to attend to. I'll leave first. Wei Si's voice was a little vague, as if he was deliberately avoiding something. Yang Si would not let him leave so easily. Changing the topic was useless against him. You haven't explained yet? You want to send me away just like that? Yang Si sat on the folding stool and calmed his breathing. Seeing that Wei Si was about to leave, he hurriedly grabbed his sleeve. His expression became serious, and he said earnestly, Zixiao, be rational. Don't do anything stupid. Wei Si smiled. It was like the sunlight that melted away ice and snow. It was neither glaring nor warm, and the temperature was just right. I know what I'm doing. She'll understand when she's older. In another 5 or 6 years, he would be 27 or 28 years old. He would be about to enter middle age. She would eventually lose interest. Yang Si naturally would not pester him when he heard him say that. It was fine as long as Wei Si knew what he was doing. Heaving a long sigh of relief, Yang Si sat on the folding stool. He stretched out his legs and hung them down without a care for his image. He hummed a strange tune. While he was feeling pleased, he was caught off guard. His lord's voice came from behind him. Where's Zixiao? Yang Si was so scared that he almost fell off the folding stool. Fortunately, he knew how to maintain his appearance and restrained himself from embarrassing himself. He got up slowly, flicked his sleeves, and folded his sleeves in a bow. Zixiao said he had something to attend to, so he left first. My lord, are you here to look for him? Jiang Pengji crossed her arms in front of her chest, and the corners of her lips curled into an inexplicable smile. No, I'm here to look for you. Yang Si was speechless. Wait, the atmosphere felt a little off. Inexplicably, Yang Si had an illusion that Jiang Pengji was here to settle scores with him. No, maybe it was not an illusion. Jiang Pengji didn't say anything. She just stared at Yang Si with a faint smile, making the latter's hair stand on end. After a while, she said, Jing Rong, do you still remember the sweetheart I mentioned before? Yang Si, wait, please don't tell him that the so-called sweetheart that the lore mentioned is Wei Si, right? His face darkened. He carefully recalled the image of the person Jiang Pengji had described. The more he thought about it, the more hopeless he felt. Master, you and Zixiao. Yang Si paused for a moment, not knowing how to persuade him. He was also a person who had been in the prime of his youth, so he knew the temperament of young people. They loved to be stubborn with others. The more the outside world tried to stop them, the more it stimulated their competitiveness. To the Lord, perhaps she liked Wei Si because she was attracted to his looks. She only felt that he was good-looking. At most, it was 80% curiosity and 20% fondness. Once there was a strong external force obstructing them, it would trigger the Lord's stubborn temper. Even a 20% liking would turn into a 100% liking. After all, you're both men. Have you thought about how the two of you will carry on the family line in the future? Yang Si spoke weakly. He and Wei Si were best friends, so he could persuade him not to worry too much. However, he could not do so when it came to Jiang Pengji. Jiang Pengji said, Why can't I? Zixiao is not a sentimental person. I don't say that he will be faithful to one person until the end, but if you have the idea of letting other women carry on the family line for him, I'm afraid that all your efforts will be in vain. You'll have schemed for nothing. Yang Si obviously misunderstood. He said vaguely and embarrassedly. What's more, my lord still has many years to live. Why delay yourself and Zixiao? You're still young. He's 6 years older than you. His lord, who was 27 or 28 years old, could still be considered young and promising. However, Wei Ci would be in his early 30s at that time. They were really not suitable for each other. Yang Si only felt that he had tried his best to persuade her. He had said everything that needed to be said, but the person in front of him did not care at all. She said, "Of course, I won't let other women touch him. I have a serious obsession with cleanliness." Yang Si did not know what obsession with cleanliness was, but he could understand some of it based on the context. He could not help but have a headache. He finally understood. It must be that his lord lacked physiological knowledge. She did not know that men could not have children. Perhaps his lord thought that 2 men could also have children? Zixiao is a man. My lord is also a man. He felt that it was a little ridiculous that he was explaining this to a young man who was almost 18 years old. Jiang Pengji was amused. And then Yang Si said, "Men can't have children." Jiang Pengji said, "I know." So? Yang Si was almost choked to death by her words. He could not breathe. She knew that men could not have children, but she did not allow Wei Ci to have children with other women. Was Wei Ci going to die without descendants? He simply gave up and said, "You and Zixiao are both men. It's impossible for you to have children." Jiang Pengji lowered her eyes and snorted. She said, "Wrong." Yang Si was stunned. What was wrong? It's true that Zixiao is a man, but everything else is wrong. Even though Yang Si's IQ was above that of ordinary people, he felt that his brain was not enough to process it at that moment. He could not react at all. He had just said, "My lord and Zixiao are both men. It's impossible for them to have children." But his lord had said, "It's true that Zixiao is a man. Everything else is wrong." In other words, "My lord is a man" was wrong. "It's impossible for them to have children" was also wrong. He was terrified to think about it carefully. Yang Si's expression changed again and again. His mind was in a mess. It was as if someone had thrown hundreds of hornets' nests at him. The bees were buzzing nonstop. My lord." Yang Si was so scared that he could not even speak properly. Jiang Pengji blinked and said, "I still have something to do. I'll leave first." After she finished speaking, she left Yang Si, who was stunned by the bombardment, and waved her sleeves without taking away a single cloud. The audience in the live stream watched the whole process. They were basically divided into 2 factions. One was worried that the streamer's gender would be exposed, while the other was worried that Yang Si would be scared silly. Huang Xiaotian, a man of few words, "This is bad. If Yang Si knows the streamer's gender, will he run away?" 1 Ku Run Han Wenqing. Not considering the power of the streamer's father, the streamer herself can be considered the lord of a prefecture. She has tens of thousands of soldiers in her hands. Yang Si is a scholar. How can he run? Run away with his head? The streamer is black-hearted and ruthless. Wei Ci is ruthless and ruthless. If the 2 of them work together, they won't be able to escape even if they grow wings. Zhou Zikai, a man of eloquence. I don't understand. Why did the streamer reveal her gender at this time? Yi Buxiu, a man of integrity. I can't understand. The streamer has now recovered all of Wanzhou. Although she can't crush all the heroes, she can't be taken lightly either. It's wise to reveal her true identity at this time. Before she is officially exposed, she can let the people around her be prepared. Obviously, through the previous test, Yang Si could accept the setting that Jiang Pengji was a woman. As long as he could stabilize the few scholars under him, the rest would be easy to handle. Chapter 664. Some were worried, and naturally, some felt sorry for him. Wang Jieshi. I feel sorry for Yang Si. He's probably scared out of his wits. Even the onlookers were fooled by the streamer, let alone him. Clever and skillful Yuan Zhou. Actually, I'm thinking, perhaps Yang Si was frightened not because the streamer is a woman, but because such a burly, heroic, valiant, and battle-savvy lord is actually a woman. Can you imagine the King Kong Barbie version of Neza? Lao Si Juliaming. Previous poster, all of you are toxic. Haha. Speaking of which, the streamer is almost 18. How's her cleavage? There's also her monthly menstruation. It seems that she hasn't mentioned it, even though I've been following the updates for so long. Guai Kai Guo Fengxiyo. Speaking of this, I suddenly remembered something that the little angel Li Hanmei said. It can be said to be a classic saying, such a stalwart man as the Lord disguised as a woman hasn't had a good look yet. Don't you think it's funny? Jiang Pengji glanced at the live stream and secretly rolled her eyes. Streamer V, prepare early. I plan to officially confess my identity at this alliance meeting to rescue the Emperor. I'll beat up whoever dares to make noise. It's a little exciting to think about being appointed as the governor of Wanzhou as a woman. On the other side, Yang Si was already scared out of his wits. Just as the audience in the live stream complained, he didn't know whether the Lord is actually a woman or such a Lord is actually a woman was scarier. He hurriedly looked for Wei Si. He stammered and only asked after a long while. My lord. Yang Si stammered for a while. Wei Si was at a loss and wished he could say it for him. Wei Si held the brush with both hands and wrote well. He asked, what's wrong with the Lord? He handled official affairs quickly. She did two things at once and did not interfere with each other. Yang Si quietly made a circle with his hands in front of his chest. His posture looked extremely wretched. A woman? Wei Si's hand paused, and he nodded. Yang Si's face darkened. He wished he could grab Wei Si's collar and ask, when did you know? I knew it from the beginning. Wei Si asked him calmly, you couldn't tell? Yang Si was so angry that he wanted to laugh. He felt that everything he had experienced today was absurd. It was a nightmare. Master, how can I tell from her appearance? Yang Si felt depressed. If he was blind, then wouldn't everyone in the world be blind? During the Battle of Qingde County, I was in the vanguard with the Lord. Where did she have any trace of being a woman? Charging more fiercely than anyone else, killing more ruthlessly than anyone else, using more strength than anyone else, and acting more arrogantly than anyone else. Was this how a noble lady of an aristocratic family behaved? Wei Si's gaze flickered and he said, who told you that women can't fight bravely and well? Yang Si choked on his words and almost couldn't catch his breath. You knew from the start that she was a woman, yet you still pledged loyalty to her. Are you crazy? At this point, Yang Si felt as if his heart had been shot by another arrow, because he had once joked with Jiang Pengji that he looked forward to the ascension of the throne when she gave birth to the emperor concubine. Damn, he had such a cheap mouth. Wei Si didn't care at all. His thick and slender eyelids drooped slightly. He said calmly, she led the troops to take down Xiangyang District. She conquered Chang'an District, Maolin District, and Jiaoping District in 3 battles. She took down Shangyang County from the Feng family and took down Qingde County in half a month. In a year and a half, she has become the de facto Lord of Wanzhou. She has tens of thousands of soldiers in her hands. She has the right to compete for the divine tripod of Jiuzhou. You know my aspiration. I only hope that the world will be unified and the rivers will be clean and the seas will be peaceful. As long as I can achieve my aspiration, what difference does it make to me if the Lord is a man or a woman? Yang Si was speechless and couldn't answer. After a while, he asked in a low voice, who else knows about the Lord's gender? Only Ciu and Huayu. The others don't know. Wei Si stopped writing and spread out the bamboo slip that he had written. He dried the ink and said, but even if the others know, they probably won't have much of a reaction. Feng Zisher has a prodigal character. He's unrestrained and does whatever he wants. He sees the secular world as dirt. Qiguan Wenzheng, even if he doesn't know the truth, I'm afraid he's aware of it. As for Su Xiaoyu, he has an extraordinary friendship with the Lord. He's loyal and has accompanied the Lord since she was born. How could he have a change of heart? Yang Si was surprised. Feng Huayu actually knows? He had been worried about Feng Jin just now. After all, based on Feng Jin's upbringing, this person was the most unlikely to accept the current situation. What happened in the end? He was someone in the know. Wei Ci said very calmly. Yes, he knows. Ci listened to Huayu's idle talk. His family's Changsheng was born during the earthquake. Shangjing was destroyed. 9 out of 10 houses collapsed, and there were countless casualties. Huayu's eldest daughter, Changsheng, was personally delivered by the Lord. Do you think he wouldn't know? Yang Si was speechless. He felt that his worldview had suffered a devastating blow. After calming down, Yang Si suddenly remembered something. The Lord has hidden it from the world for so many years. Why did she suddenly tell me? Wei Ci said, You still don't know? The power of the governor of Wanzhou isn't big, but it's not small either. It's just the right time to expose her identity. Let me tell you, I'm just testing the waters and testing the bottom line of acceptance. Just wait. Before the rescue mission is over, the Lord will definitely reveal her identity. Yang Si rubbed his eyebrows. There was too much information. He needed time to calm down. The Lord is so calculative. Thinking of the women's camp, he couldn't help but smile bitterly. It turned out that she had already started planning and laying the groundwork. How could I have gotten to this point without some calculation? Wei Ci knew that not only could she become the governor of the province, but she would also become the ruler of the world and compete for the final winner of the 9 provinces' divine cauldrons. Yang Si's mind was in a mess. He found that once he accepted the setting that the Lord was a woman, it seemed quite interesting. At least, when Jiang Pengji slept with Wei Zixiao in the future, Yang Si wouldn't have to be so conflicted. Thinking of this, he suddenly remembered something. How was the relationship between the Lord and the old master? Wei Ci glanced at him and said, Not bad. Yang Si pinched his chin, his heart bubbling with black water. I heard from Feng Huayu that the Lord has a brother born of a mistress. If he didn't know Jiang Pengji's gender, Lu Shi and Jiang Pengji's father and son, power was clearly divided. Yang Si wouldn't have thought much about it. But now he was a little worried. No matter how good a daughter was, she was still a daughter. After all, she had to get married and have children. How could the child be better than a son? Wei Ci looked down, his eyes filled with a cold light. I know what you're worried about. That bastard is indeed a hidden danger. If he knew his place, Wei Ci couldn't be bothered with him. If he was tormented, he didn't mind being more ruthless. If the Lord wanted to blame him, that would be for the best. The two of them would take the opportunity to cut off all the ties that shouldn't exist. Under such an atmosphere, Jiang Pengji received further instructions to rescue the emperor. Many forces prepared to gather at Huangshui to discuss important matters. Huangshui. Jiang Pengji glanced at the map of Dongqing. Huangshui was a tributary of Dongqing's mother river. It was only a little narrower than the main trunk. Chapter 665. After conquering Qingda County, Jiang Pengji did not immediately set off to rescue the emperor. Instead, she spent half a month stabilizing her power. She generously gave the 8,000 captives and 10% of the money to Shui, making him feel a little embarrassed. Shui was a man with many tricks up his sleeves. He emphasized kindness and authority, and he was clear about rewards and punishments. He handled the 8,000 captives well. He stayed in Qingda County for 2 days, then left with his men and money, heading for Huangshui. Jiang Pengji was so busy that she had no time to think about her personal feelings. Wei Ci, on the other hand, heaved a long sigh of relief. The biggest gain from attacking Qingda County this time was not gathering the territory of Wanzhou, but taking over the manpower of the Red Lotus Group. Tens of thousands of captives were nothing in other large-scale battles, but for Jiang Pengji, they were still very beneficial. After a whole year of rest and construction, Fengyi County was now the most prosperous and developed place in Wanzhou. Shangyang County was second, and Qingda County was at the bottom. Qingda County had been exploited by the Red Lotus Group many times, and there was a heavy population loss. To attract more refugees and develop the local economy, development and construction became the top priority. Jiang Pengji racked her brains for half a night, planning to assign the people under her to various places. I'm still too short of manpower. I hope I can poach some good people from the Alliance meeting to rescue the Emperor. Even though Jiang Pingji was energetic and full of physical strength, she was so tired that her eyes were bloodshot when faced with such a big problem. Fortunately, she had the experience of starting from scratch. She had accumulated a wealth of experience in the construction and construction of county. Other areas could be slightly modified and then copied. Fengyi County had an iron mine, and Chengde County also had a natural advantage. It was rich in coal, so she could make use of it. However, the most important thing at the moment was to select new soldiers and assign the captives to reclaim wastelands, build roads, and build houses. Although she had taken over Chengde County, it was actually not easy. The entire army had barely stopped moving, and the soldiers were exhausted. After taking over Chengde County, she still had a lot of things to do. Settling down the captives and squeezing their labor was just a small matter. Jiang Pingji had more troublesome matters to deal with, such as the aftermath of the soldiers who died in battle, the compensation for their families, and the arrangements for the injured and disabled soldiers. It would be spring in a month or two. She could temporarily stop the progress of other matters, but she could not delay the arrangements for the spring plowing, the selection and training of the new soldiers, and the arrangement of manpower in each county. Although she had become the actual governor of Wanzhou, it looked glorious on the surface. On the inside, she was treading on thin ice and walking on a tightrope. If it came down to it, she didn't have enough troops. If something went wrong, she would be in a terrible situation. 20 to 30,000 soldiers could guard a county, but it was difficult to intimidate a prefecture. Therefore, the recruitment of new soldiers and the expansion of military strength were the top priority at the moment. Under the pressure of the heavy workload, a few strategists were so tired that they wanted to move their homes to the government office. Jiang Pingji also found it difficult to rest. Apart from these matters, Jiang Pingji also had to coordinate the troops in various places and mobilize the troops to prepare for the rescue of the emperor. God, give me an all-purpose shovel. Jiang Pingji hated official business the most. Instead of dealing with words all day, she would rather have a good fight with someone. What does my lord need a shovel for? Yang Si was surprised. Ever since Yang Si found out about Jiang Pingji's true gender, he thought that he would be very awkward, but it turned out that he had been thinking too much. As long as she didn't deliberately remind him, Yang Si subconsciously treated her as a man. Occasionally, when he thought about it, he still felt that it was like a dream. Such a valiant and brave lord who fought against 100 men alone, charged and broke through enemy lines, attacked cities, and conquered lands. How could the omnipotent lord be a girl? Every time he had such doubts, he couldn't help but glance at Jiang Pingji's chest. It clearly didn't have the slightest curve. He looked at her face again. Her facial features were regular, and there was a heroic spirit in her eyes and brows. Indeed, she didn't have the masculinity that a man should have. However, nowadays, men like to wear flowers and powder in their hair and wear red and green. Based on such standards, Jiang Pingji could already be considered a man. So this girl was fake, right? Jiang Pingji said, using a shovel to poach someone. Jing Rong, don't you think that we are too short of people? This doesn't make sense. No matter what, your lord is sitting on a prefecture. Not to mention how I can make a name for myself, but I'm not as good as the top, but I'm better than the bottom. Why is there no talent to seek refuge with? She didn't expect the people to seek refuge with to be top-notch strategists, but there should be third-rate talents, right? What was the result? The number of talents that others yearned for was in the double digits, but there wasn't a single mid-level talent. Yang Si didn't know what science was, but he could still understand it in the context. He said, "My lord, have you forgotten that the old master hasn't retired yet?" Jiang Pingji didn't speak. Lu Shi was the magistrate of Chongzhou. He was in the prime of his life. In the words of the audience in the streaming room, he had a car, a house, a successful career, and a mature, steady, and doting personality. He was definitely a wealthy husband. Jiang Pingji was indeed young and promising. She had great potential, but how could she be more attractive than a ready-made, successful person like Lu Shi? If they really wanted to seek refuge with the Lu family, Lu Shi would be their first choice to seek refuge with. Yang Si thought that he had given her a blow and eased his tone. "My lord, don't be anxious. This matter needs to be discussed at length." Compared to talent, Yangtze was more afraid of a lack of time. If they were given enough buffer time and development time, with Wei Xi's connections and the talents they nurtured themselves, would they be afraid of a shortage of people? Jiang Pengji nodded, her brows slightly furrowed. That's true. Haste makes waste. She had plenty of time to slowly build up. The situation in the world was getting more and more severe. Only by laying a solid foundation could one remain invincible. After Jiang Pengji discussed with everyone, she planned to set off for the rescue of the emperor in half a month. During this period, she would go to various places in Wanzhou and be so busy that her feet wouldn't rest. At that moment, an unexpected visitor was slowly entering the territory of Wanzhou, approaching Xiangyang district. "Father, I just heard that the war in Chengde County has ended. Lu Shi is really amazing. It's only been half a month." A young man in his early 20s bent over and entered the carriage. His face was filled with surprise and admiration. "If I knew it would be so soon, I wouldn't have changed my route." Their whole family had taken refuge. As soon as they arrived at the border of Wanzhou, they heard that there was a war in Chengde County. The two sides were locked in a fierce battle. To prevent accidental injuries, their family had to change their route and take a detour. They were only half a day's journey from Xiangyang district, but the war had actually ended. A middle-aged man sat upright in the carriage. He looked to be about 37 or 38 years old. The woman beside him had taken good care of herself. At a glance, one could tell that she usually lived like a prince. She didn't do any chores. She looked much younger than her actual age. She seemed to be in her early 30s. The woman had an excellent bearing. She was reserved and elegant. Seeing that the young man's head and shoulders were stained with snow, she couldn't help but raise her hand to brush them off with a handkerchief. The middle-aged man stroked his beard and chuckled. "Ha! A son should be like this. Lu Zhongxing is so blessed." Chapter 666. Take it. Don't freeze. While the father and son were talking, the woman handed the hot water to her son. "Thank you, mother." The woman smiled kindly. The atmosphere of the family was harmonious. The young man touched the hot water. His cold palms were coaxed into warmth. He thought of something and said with a smile, "Fortunately, Lu Shi provided enough bamboo paper. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to take those treasures with me. I could only leave them behind." The middle-aged man said, "Even if I leave you behind, I won't leave behind the treasures of the rest of my life." The young man was speechless. What a father! Thinking of the suffering he had endured these days, the young man was also depressed. "Father, who is this Lu Shi?" The young man held the hot water in one hand and rested his chin on the other, puzzled. "Lu Shi is just a district magistrate, but now he has taken over the whole of Wanzhou. It's obvious that he's ambitious. What's the difference between him and Huang Song? Fifth granduncle is on Huang Song's side. Is Lu Shi more reliable than Huang Song? He came all the way to Xianyang district. It's so cold." The middle-aged man raised his eyebrows and frowned. How can it be the same? The young man heard this and subconsciously tensed up, afraid that his father would reprimand him. In front of outsiders, the middle-aged man was a man of few words, but in front of his family, he was not stingy with his words. You only see Lu Shi and forget that he has another identity, Lu Shi's son. Lu Shi only has Wanzhou, but Lu Shi has Chongzhou and Hu County. How can we underestimate this father and son pair? The middle-aged man looked down and stroked his beard. Huang Song is indeed good, but I don't like his temperament. Moreover, Lu Shi has saved my life. Who else should I choose but him? The middle-aged man was Cheng Cheng. That year, he rushed to Shangjing with his wife. On the way, they were chased by strange enemies and almost lost their lives. Coincidentally, Jiang Pengji was nearby. She conveniently rescued the couple, and the two families formed a good relationship. Cheng Cheng brought his wife and child to Xiangyang district to seek shelter with Jiang Pengji. He was originally the district magistrate of Sui, and county in Fufeng County of Haozhou. Because he hated the intrigue in the officialdom, he was not promoted. Not long ago, he encountered a troublesome matter. Cheng Cheng had an uncle who was even younger than him, Cheng Jing. His courtesy name was Yumo, and he was also the fifth great-uncle that the young man mentioned. Cheng Jing was loyal to Huang Song, and Huang Song tried to use Suiyang County as a springboard to encroach on the entire Fufeng County. If that was the case, he didn't mind. As long as the people under his rule weren't harmed, he could resign, retire, and hand over Suiyang County. After all, with the current situation, he, a mere county magistrate, could not protect this territory. However, after a few attempts, Cheng Cheng realized that it was impossible to fire him and leave. Once Huang Song conquered Fufeng County, he would force his way in. How could that do? Cheng Cheng received a secret letter from his uncle, Cheng Jing. After pondering for a long time, he decisively packed up his belongings and prepared to flee with his family. Cheng Cheng handed over Suiyang County to Huang Song for the sake of his uncle, Cheng Jing, hoping that he would treat the people well. Cheng Cheng had never thought of returning to the Langyecheng clan because Langya County was also an important place for military strategists. Now that the world was in chaos, that place was even more unsafe. After much thought, Cheng Cheng set his sights on the largest force in the north, the Liu family. He immediately decided to seek refuge with Liu Shi. Firstly, he and Liu Shi had been friends through letters for several years. They were gentlemen's acquaintances, and he trusted the Liu family. Secondly, Dongqing was fragmented internally, and various forces were rising. The Liu family kept a low profile, and their overall strength was the strongest. Seeking refuge with the Liu family gave him a sense of security. Thirdly, Liu Shi had saved the couple's lives. Based on the principle of not leaving fertile water to outsiders, of course, he would prioritize the Liu family. Why didn't he seek refuge with Liu Shi? Liu Shi and Liu Shi were father and son. It didn't matter who they sought refuge with. Of course, they would choose the closest one. The young man listened to Cheng Cheng's words and muttered, "I thought that the person favored by the fifth uncle would definitely not be bad." Thinking of Cheng Jing, Cheng Cheng frowned. To be honest, he still had a grudge against Huang Song's birth as a eunuch. He really couldn't understand why Cheng Jing would choose such a lord. Not long after, Xiangyang district was within reach. Cheng Cheng's convoy consisted of dozens of carriages. It looked mighty and powerful. Without any suspense, they were stopped by the guards at the city gate and asked to check their belongings. Cheng Cheng was very cooperative and let his wife and children out of the carriage. The guard lifted the curtain of the carriage to check. His eyes were filled with astonishment. The carriage was filled with bamboo slips and books bound with bamboo paper. It was stuffed to the brim. No wonder the horses had such a hard time pulling the carriage. It was so heavy. The guard was not blind. Those who could afford to read were mostly from well-to-do families. Those who had so many books were definitely from noble families. Cheng Cheng reported his family name. When the guard heard it, he didn't dare to delay and quickly sent someone to inform the big shots in the government office. The other party claims to be from the Cheng family of Langya. His name is Cheng Cheng. Suku had been busy all night last night. His eye bags were swollen and bruised. He looked like he had overindulged in sex and injured himself. He wanted to catch up on sleep and fight again when he woke up, but the messenger told him that Cheng Cheng had arrived. Qiguan Rang was surprised. Who is this person? He had never heard of him. Suka knew Cheng Cheng. Although he didn't interact much with Cheng Cheng, he admired Cheng Cheng's integrity and secretly admired him. Although he isn't famous, he is a respectable scholar. If the Lord knows he's here, she will be very happy. Hearing Su Ku's words, Qiguan Rang's interest was piqued. He wanted to meet this scholar that Su Ku praised. Su Ku continued, "But I don't know why Master Cheng is here. Why did he come to Xiangyang district at this time?" When he saw Cheng Cheng's convoy and his treasures, his expression almost cracked. This man really had a character. He liked to bring his treasure books with him when he went out. He never forgot to bring them with him wherever he went. Qiguan Rang's eyes lit up instantly. It was as if he saw countless fairies descending from the sky. For scholars who were eager to learn, what could be more attractive than tens of thousands of books? Jiangpengji wasn't in Xiangyang district. The task of entertaining Chung Chung fell on Su Ke's shoulders. First, he had to clarify Chung Cheng's intentions. Chung Chung didn't hide anything. He told Su Ke and Qiguan Rang his situation directly. Su Ke and Qiguan Rang were overwhelmed by the favor. This was a windfall, not to mention Chung Cheng's wealth. Just the 10,000 books he brought were worth countless treasures. Because Jiang Pengji wasn't around, Su Ke and Qiguan Rang had a private discussion. They arranged for Chung Cheng's family to stay in the best house in the district. The two of them were not idiots. Talents who came to their territory were their people. How could they let a cooked duck fly away? Idiots? Huang Song was shot in the knee for no reason. Chung Chung accepted it with a smile and settled down with his wife and children. Su Ke turned around and sent an urgent secret letter to Jiang Pengji. Although Chung Chung was an employee that could be exploited, he could help Jiang Pengji train employees that could be exploited. Thinking of how busy he had been during this period of time, Su Ke wished that his lord could grow wings and fly back right now. Chapter 667. Knowing that the cooked duck. No, Chung Chung had brought his family to Xiangyang District. Jiang Pengji still felt like she was in a dream. She looked at the messenger dumbfoundedly, then looked at the secret letter in her hand. It was an important letter that Su Ke had sent urgently. Who did you say came? The messenger repeated what he had just said. Although Jiang Pengji did not completely lose her composure, she could not help but smile. This Chung Chung was not an ordinary person. Yang Si looked at Jiang Pengji's expression and made this speculation. Congratulations, my lord. It was a good sign that someone had taken the initiative to seek shelter. Yang Si folded his sleeves, bowed, and congratulated her in a clear voice. Wei Si lowered his eyelids and said, I'm afraid it's not that simple. Cheng Wenfu was originally the district magistrate of Sui in Fufeng County of Haozhou. If he did not encounter a difficult problem, I'm afraid he would not easily abandon everything he has and bring his family to seek shelter with you. I'm afraid there's more to this. Hearing how Wei Si addressed Chung Chung, Yang Si raised his eyebrows in dissatisfaction. You know Chung Chung? Listen, he directly called Cheng Wenfu. Addressing someone by their courtesy name was either a superior to a subordinate, a senior to a junior, or a friend of the same generation. What was the relationship between Wei Si and Chung Chung? The answer was a friend despite the difference in age. Yes, we've occasionally exchanged letters over the years. Cheng Wenfu is not a reckless and hot-blooded person. He was willing to leave the mainland with his family, so he must have encountered some problems. Wei Si knew Chung Chung in this life, and they were friends in their previous life. They had a good relationship, and he also knew how important Chung Chung was. I think that my lord should ask clearly before making plans. Cheng Wenfu is usually a man of few words and doesn't like to communicate with others. If my lord doesn't know clearly and accidentally offends him, I'm afraid you'll inadvertently offend him. Most talents had a temper. Jiang Pengji did not need to follow their lead, but she could not be careless and offend him. Jiang Pengji naturally knew this principle. Otherwise, based on her sarcastic face and verbal skills, she would not be able to form today's overtime team. Hearing that Wei Si and Chung Chung actually knew each other, she said, although I have some connections with Uncle Chung, I've only known him for a short time, and I'm not clear about many details. If you know anything, you can tell me so that I can be mentally prepared. We'll talk in detail later. Wei Si agreed calmly. Indeed, he had to deal with Chung Chung seriously to avoid losing such a talented person. Normally, Yang Si wouldn't think much of this conversation, but now he knew that his lord was not a pure male. He always felt that the conversation between his lord and Zi Xiao made him think about it very carefully. He was probably scared out of his wits. When he looked at his lord now, he constantly felt that she wanted to sleep with Wei Si. She threw Wei Si a look that said, "You're on your own." Wei Si was confused. Yang Si still had an "I didn't hear anything" expression on his face, ignoring everything around him. Recently, He had nothing to do. The live stream was basically about Jiang Pengji and her subordinates working overtime. The content was a little boring. The live stream viewers did not care. They were the best at finding joy in hardship. They were good at finding cuteness from the details and capturing all kinds of emoticons. For example now, good facial features Wang Jieshi. If the host had a social platform like Baidu in this era, maybe Yang Si would ask for help. I've even thought of the topic, help from the underworld. My boss wants to sleep with my bad friend. What should I do? Pure and kind Zhang Xinjia. Of course. Come and watch. Lucky goddess Zhang Jiala. Of course. Assist. Jiang Pengji pursed her lips. Sleeping with someone? Was she that bad? Host V. I'm afraid you've forgotten that Zi Xiao threw himself into my arms. After she posted this sentence, it was followed by 666, and host's heart is shameless. After laughing and fooling around, Jiang Pengji did not forget about business. She dug out the memory of meeting Cheng many years ago and carefully speculated. Wei Si asked her in private, does my lord want to put Cheng Wenfu in an important position? Jiang Pengji said, your lord has never liked to keep idle people, unless they are family members. Wei Si was speechless. I've read Su Ku's letter carefully and have a general understanding. Huang Song's influence in Haozhou was growing. He wanted to use Sui and County, where Cheng lived, as a springboard to get his hands on the entire Fufeng County. This was not a big deal. After all, Cheng Cheng's fifth uncle, Cheng Jing, worked under Huang Song. If Sui and County benefits others, it's better to benefit Huang Song. However, Cheng did not stay in Haozhou with peace of mind. Instead, he left with his family. It's mostly because he doesn't want to work for Huang Song, or rather, he doesn't like official strife. Huang Song was currently short of manpower. If Cheng became Huang Song's subordinate, he would either be used by him seriously, or he would inevitably be involved in power strife. This was what Cheng hated the most. Or, Cheng could compromise and find a way to resign. However, according to Huang Song's temperament, would he let Cheng off so easily? Obviously, this was impossible. Even if he agreed to Cheng's resignation, he would probably find a way to restrict the personal freedom of Cheng's family and restrict them from working for others. According to Jiang Pengji's understanding of Huang Song, the probability of this guy doing so was very high, especially after the incident with Yang Si. Wei Si said, then, my lord means, through Jiang Pengji's words, Wei Si knew that she would not force Cheng, but if she did not force him, wouldn't it be a waste of manpower? Jiang Pengji snorted and secretly laughed at Huang Song's bad luck. It was fine to miss out on Yang Si, but now even Cheng, who was comparable to a mountain of gold and silver, had been missed. She said, let Cheng do whatever he likes. It's not like he's neglecting his proper duties. Wei Si was surprised. Her tone did not sound like a junior talking to an elder. Instead, she spoiled Cheng like a junior. But then again, he was an old child. Shouldn't he be spoiled? Even though Cheng was not that old yet. Jiang Pengji's eyes seemed to have a myriad of stars. Mr. Cheng has a collection of tens of thousands of books at home. Most of them are precious stocks. Back then, I was immature and used bamboo paper as a fee to polish my brush. I begged him to make a copy of the book for me. Mr. Cheng did not fuss over it. Instead, he did what he said. Now that I think about it, I feel rather ashamed. I think that Mr. Cheng must be an extremely noble scholar. He once said that he did everything possible to collect these unique books just so that future generations could also see the glory of their predecessors. It was not for selfishness or for profit. Since this is the case, why not fulfill Mr. Cheng's wish? Wei Si did not speak. Through this conversation, he knew that Jiang Pengji would not wrong Cheng. Instead, she would make Cheng continue to sacrifice his life for her. Wasn't it like this in her previous life? There were only a few days left before the army set off to rescue the emperor, but Cheng's matter could not be delayed. What if he felt that Jiang Pengji had neglected him and ran away with his family? Therefore, Jiang Pengji rode on Little White that day and rushed to Xiangyang district overnight. The journey was dusty. Even Little White, a peerless horse that could travel thousands of miles a day, was exhausted in the end. She instructed the horsekeeper, "Prepare the best food for Little White and serve him well." You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.